So Harvard has just one essay question, which is tell us more about yourself, which we can't get from your CV or from your application.
Which
so
I just asked. Which I asked in the
would you
introduction.
Wharton encourages partying so much that we don't have classes on Fridays. We have a 4-day work week, so Fridays is social.
And we don't have classes on Wednesdays. They're only Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, because they so Tuesdays Tuesday nights are like Friday nights.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a Friday night. So,
Yeah.
Growing up, Harvard Business School had that image and had that brand tag for me. So I decided if I get into Harvard, then I'll do my MBA.
Did you mention in your essay you met Stephen Schwarzman and you worked with him and all? Hi everyone, welcome to Conversation with Kushal once again. If you are someone who wants to get into an international MBA in universities like Harvard, Stanford or Wharton and you want to know everything about the application processes, GMAT preparation, what is the MBA experience at these universities, what are the exit opportunities, average placement packages in these universities, what are the fees, scholarship process, you're going to get all the insights in this particular episode itself. We have Sanvar from Stanford, we have Sarthak from Harvard and we have Akshay from Wharton and these people are going to throw a lot of insights on their journeys as well. So thank you so much Sanvar, Sarthak and Akshay for doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun interacting with all of you.
sweet.
Yeah, happy to be here, dude.
Happy to be here, man.
Perfect, thanks. So let's start with a quick round of introduction, guys. So maybe we can just talk about your journeys as well. We can go alphabetically.
Yeah.
And Akshay, you can go first. Just one rule here is that you have to give your introduction, not resume oriented. You have to tell something which is not in your resume as well after you introduce yourself.
Sure. So Akshay Cyril, so I grew up in Kochi in Kerala. I did consulting for around 5 years in BCG India. Did my undergrad at St. Stephen's in math before this. Wanted to pivot into tech and that's what sort of drove my aspiration to get into an international B school. And I think one non-CV-ish thing is I'm addicted to playing FIFA. And I'm so competitive, I just got into a streak of just playing competitive online games. I must have crossed around 1,000 games right now. So that's something that's, I don't know whether I should call it a hobby, a passion or a vice at this point. So, yeah.
Did you include that in your application process as well while applying to Wharton?
I mean, I did speak to a few people about it, although it wasn't like a written part of it. It did come out in conversations.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Next, I think Sanvar. Yeah, it's difficult to take out. Yeah.
I'm Sanvar. I born and raised in Bombay. I did BBA, or in University of Mumbai it's called BMS, but I did BBA or BMS equivalent in Bombay. I graduated from my undergrad in 2011. Started my career at Deloitte as part of the risk team for a year and a half, so 2011, 2012. And then I set up my first company, my first startup. It was called the Bombay Hemp Company. It was the first hemp company in India, but we focused on the industrial uses of this plant called hemp, and truly industrial uses. And so it was an 8-year journey. We expanded mostly we made most of our money selling pharma API as cannabis extract to big pharma in the pain or the oncology business. And then I moved out. I sold partly moved out secondaries at Series B in 2020, and then did a bit of a role with the government of India, moved to Delhi for a year, but went to Stanford in 2021 and graduated in 23, which was last year, and back to startups now. So that's a quick bit on me. I think the thing that's not on my resume that you can't find on LinkedIn is that I think I've been a part of more than one global secret societies that a lot of people talk. There's a lot of internet memes about, but yeah, I've been a part of a few of them, two of them actually.
Got it. Perfect. And before your Stanford journey, so how many years you ran your startup?
Yeah, startup was 8 years, and then a year and a half at Deloitte, and then a year and a half after that at doing this Government of India thing. So net it was roughly 10 to 11 years of work.
Got it. And what are you doing currently?
I'm back to building a startup, so I'm back to being a co-founder of another startup now.
Got it. Perfect. Sarthak?
Hey guys, this is Sarthak. Born and brought up in Jaipur, did all my schooling and everything from there, and then I moved to Mumbai for my undergrad. Did electrical and computer science engineering from IIT Bombay. And post that, I turned a page in my career, joined finance right away, and I joined Blackstone in its private equity group based out of Mumbai. For 4 years, I was there investing and analyzing across different industries, managing portfolio companies, post which I decided to pursue my MBA from Harvard Business School. and now I'm back last year back to India, and I joined PAG Capital. It's a Asia-focused private equity and alternative assets management shop, and I've been here for the last 7 or 8 months.
And what is something which is not there in your resume? A lot of things, I think.
Yeah, there are quite a few things, but maybe one thing which doesn't feature is I love dancing, and
Nice.
Oh,
I've
wow.
been doing that since my childhood. Was part of one dance group in my IT days. Even at Harvard, there's a Bollywood dance competition which happens, which I was part of.
And did you win that competition?
It's a group dance, so but we did end up getting second in the year that we participated. So, but that is one thing which is not there.
Oh, wow. And I think singing also, right? You're
Yes,
into
I love singing
classical
also.
singing?
Yes, I'm trained in vocal classical singing for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
But out of practice now, so don't
Yeah.
ask me to sing. But I love singing.
I
like
was
on
going to
and
ask you. I know. I've seen a YouTube video of yours that has. I mean, I think that's crossed good views also.
Oh,
70,
yeah.
80,000 views.
Long time back.
You've sung some bhajan, if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember.
yeah. No, I've been religious since
Yeah.
growing up. Like my family has been very religious. We are Jains, and we did that like 7 or 8 years back.
Yeah.
Me and my brother.
Yeah.
Please don't YouTube it. Now. It's a little embarrassing now.
I just type Sarthak Daga singing and you will find 3rd or 4th video.
I think I'll need to remove it. It's on my channel.
The things you have to do to get into Howard.
Right. Guys, so one question which I also ask everyone before we start the actual conversation is also the return on investment which one can get from their education. So for me, I spent around 3.5 lakh rupees doing my chartered accountancy, and the first package which was there was around 18.25 lakhs in Aditya Birla Group, which is a good ROI. Again, like we're not considering time here, but just the monetary amount. So maybe like one by one, wanted to understand like what was your total spend in education? Of course, the Harvard and Stanford and Wharton part would come later, but even the undergrad part and the first salary types, like what was that ROI for all three of you?
I think in my case it was quite similar to your Kushal's. I think the fee structure at Stephens was, because it was under UGC, tuition fees was more or less modest. And since I got into BCG right away, I think it was similar numbers that I was looking at, 3 to 4 lakhs of total expenditure, I guess, for the 3 years that I was there. And I think my starting package at BCG as an associate was, I think, 17 base and 20 CTC. So that was my ROI. So very similar to yours.
20 CTC and like 3 was variable, like 17
performance
plus 3.
linked. Yeah, 17 plus 3. Yes.
Okay, got it. And this is for your undergrad.
Yeah, so I started as an associate, consulting team, consultant -2 essentially in the org hierarchy.
Got it, fair. And Wharton, you've not yet graduated, so you would.
Yeah, I won't be able to speak to the ROI just yet. Yeah.
Right. What about you guys?
Maybe I'll go. So again, I think very similar to you guys. Undergrad was not that expensive because it was IIT, it was government funded partly. So 4 years would have, just on tuition, would have costed around 3 lakh or so.
Oh, that's it.
For 4 years.
Okay.
And then hostel, and if you combine everything, then it would be like 3.5 lakhs. And then there are multiple job opportunities that you get after IIT. I got into a pretty lucrative ones, which paid me pretty well. So that ROI was pretty high. So private equity analyst, usually think you can make around 40-45 lakhs at the start. So pretty good ROI. Then at Harvard, like it's on a different scale altogether.
Yeah.
The total spend for 2 years just on tuition goes into crores. And I think the ROI for Bschools is, I think, more long term. I don't think you can calculate that in just 1 or 2 years out of it. So still yet to determine what the incremental ROI of going to HBS has been. But I guess we'll know.
Just before that, so how many people from IIT Bombay got into Blackstone from your batch?
So there are 2.
Okay.
Blackstone usually goes to IIT Bombay. And they hire 1 or 2 people typically, depending on how much room they have. Yeah, it's a pretty sought after job, honestly, because it's a very lucrative one. It's a different industry. People want to go into non-core finance.
So from IIT Bombay, like how many total students are there in 1 year? Like in the 4th year, how many people will be sitting?
Around 800.
800. And out of 800, like 850, so how many of them would be going into finance jobs?
I would say I would classify it as engineering versus non-core.
Okay.
So most of the non-CS, non-computer science and non-electrical mechanical people go into non-core jobs. I'd say almost like 500 people would be going into non-core. It's my assumption.
Okay.
Like, I haven't fact-checked it. I
Got
don't
it.
know exactly, but that's my
But
sense.
specifically, let's say P, VC or IB, like these kind of domains, usually do people from IIT Bombay also get into those roles, like after graduation?
Very few. Very
Okay.
few. Typically, IBs go to IIMs and that's where they hire from majorly.
Okay.
There are a few who go, like Morgan Stanley goes to IIT Bombay. They hire one or two people. I think JP Morgan also goes. There are a few IBs which go. Ps have now started doing more and more. Like Blackstone, I think, was the first to do it. There are more domestic Ps who are doing very well right now, who I think are starting to go directly to campus. So I think it's increasing over time.
Got it.
But still, largely, I think you have to do mostly some quant analysis role, which is more suited towards engineers, right? So you would join JP Morgan's risk team, you would join Morgan Stanley's risk team, risk analytics team, where you're doing more quant-focused finance rather than pure finance, which is PE, VC, and IB.
Got it. Fair. Cool. So for you, Sanvar, what would your number
Similar, that undergrad was subsidized University of Mumbai Asia College, and so it, like, I think the fees was 18,000 per year kind of stuff for 3 years, so almost negligible in that sense. Deloitte pays the least, clearly, relative to sort of, and Deloitte risk team was just not well paying, and so I think the CTC was 10 lakhs, between 8 and 10 lakhs kind of stuff. So still, the ROI, so to say, was still good, but a far lower sort of starting point in the CTC place. Stanford, on the other hand, similar thing, cost $250K, which is 2 point some crores for tuition and living expenses. And that's the thing, right? With MBA programs, it's very hard to judge what it's really going to cost, because there's this $250K, which that you can take as a given you're going to spend, and then after that depends on like how well. Then there's like a lot of like how much you want to socialize, and do you want to go skiing to France and Japan or not, kind of stuff. So which he's must be in the middle of right now, I guess. If he comes to Bombay. But $250K for sure, and then the average, I think, salary of the class was similar to $50K kind of stuff, at least in my graduating year as well. Of course, we're hit by this current like recession climate and in the US, but $250K. So that way but that's again where you start off at that and you go up from there.
Right.
So that's it, rough numbers at least.
Right. And when did you guys decide that you wanted to pursue MBA? So when was it for you?
I decided pretty late, honestly. So typically at Blackstone, like there's a 4-year program where you, after 4 years, you decide whether you want to continue or do you want to go for an MBA. Even after like my 3rd year, I wasn't sure if I want to do an MBA, and within that, do I want to do a global MBA?
Right.
Because I was always clear that I want to be back in India, so it wasn't really a straightforward choice for me. And honestly, even like I still applied. In my mind, it was pretty clear, and no offense to any other school, but I don't know, while growing up I had just heard a lot about Harvard, so I decided that if I get into Harvard, then I'll do my MBA,
Because
otherwise I'll just skip it.
I think even Stephen Schwarzman is from Harvard.
Yeah,
only, right? So that would also be one of the reasons.
Yeah, partly. I mean, you follow the people who you have been looking around with and you've been working a lot with. So yes, that was one that partly influenced, but also just growing up, Harvard Business School had that image and had that brand tag for me. So I decided if I get into Harvard, then I'll do my MBA. Even after getting in, I got in like December of 2020 during COVID, and even after getting in for 1 month or 2 months, I was still in double minds. Do I go? Do I not go? But eventually I decided that I think for the long term it will probably benefit, and that's when I finally decided that I'm doing this MBA. Pretty late. Yeah.
Right.
Wait, sorry, I'm just curious. So, if you applied what do you apply? Sorry, I'm taking
No,
like a
this
role,
is-
but like, if you applied round 1, do you apply
Yes.
round 1?
Yes.
Okay, so that means you applied round 1, which is August 2020.
Yes.
For the batch starting in 21.
2021. Yes.
Correct. And so, when did you really start your prep?
So I started my prep. So I started my prep for GMAT first. So I appeared for my GMAT in May of 2020, for which I prepared for about a month. So
COVID,
April,
perfect. First lockdown.
exactly,
COVID,
like
yeah.
first lockdown COVID, you're at home, you can spend time as you want. to some extent. But yeah, that's when I prepared for GMAT. I appeared for my GMAT in May, and then I prepared my essay. And I think we can cover the entire process in more detail.
Okay.
But that's when all that started.
Yeah. What are the timelines for you guys?
So in my case, it was slightly more in flux. I kind of had a very rough idea that I may want to do an MBA. So I took the GMAT seriously because I knew that it had a 5-year validity. So in case my plans became certain at some point, I could take that as a starting point. My experience in BCG was great, and that also just made it hard to decide, if I should leave, when I should leave, etc. And because I had joined out of undergrad, there was one part of the thinking was, hey, you would need a secondary education beyond just an undergrad, so an MBA makes sense. But at the same time, I also have seen a lot of cases where in BCG people who join as associates have really good growth in the company as well. So that made it more difficult to choose as well. But I think somewhere around the second or third year, I did decide to take it seriously. Even the way I thought about it is, if I did continue in consulting, it will add to the cred. It'll just help have those conversations much more credibly than just saying, hey, I'm just a guy who did 3 years of math, right? I mean, there's so much credibility you can buy from a CEO. So that was one line of thinking. And the other line of thinking was, in case at some point I do decide to step away from consulting, I wanted to have the right platform to sort of facilitate that pivot. So around the second or third year mark, started to take prep a lot more seriously, ramped up on the GMAT prep, just sat for 2 months, studied it, gave it. And then I applied for Bschools in the round 1 applications of 2022, right? Yeah, 2022, right? So applied for them, luckily got Wharton admit in round 1. So that just the path was a little bit more clear. The way I thought about the choice of Bschools was also, in round 1, I'll be a lot more aggressive, target a small set of elites. In case that doesn't work out, we'll sort of, expand that pool. But luckily Wharton worked out, and here we are.
So tell me one thing, when you guys decide to do an MBA, so do you guys tell it to your employers when you give your GMAT, or what is the right time to tell to your bosses that, okay, now I've decided that I've got into MBA, I've got an admit, and now I need to resign from the firm? How does that happen?
That's a very tricky question, because in consulting, I don't know who my boss is. Whoever is the partner on a project that I'm currently working on is on paper my boss. There's also a career advisor that I do have. And there are also mentors I have who are partners within the firm. So I think for each 3 stakeholders that I have, I socialized it differently. To my career advisor, I always gave them a heads up that, listen, this is something that's also top of mind. So I may want to think about stepping away from BCG to pursue B School at some point in time. To a few mentors that I had given them the same kind of heads up. But my on paper reporting manager was someone who I didn't feel it was relevant to tell a partner on a project in year 2 that, hey, in year 4 I might give him consulting, but in year 2 he may not even care, right? Because he probably won't see me in a year from now. So it was difficult to handle. But I did sort of share my aspirations a little early, just to get their point of view, whether, hey, here's how I'm thinking about my career, here is how I see an MBA fitting into those plans. How does that resonate to you? What is your sort of guidance to this? So to have those conversations, I did give them a heads up about my plans. But it was only after I got my Wharton admit that I socialized within the chain of command in the firm to facilitate the whole exit process. So I think BCG has a 3-month notice period. So I think, but even a couple of months before that, I just tell whoever I'm working under that, listen, here is the timeline where I am going to exit the firm. Please plan your usage of me as a resource on the basis of that. Plan my resignation and email in a way that this is the day I exit the firm and all of that. So it's a very flux. It's an answer that's in flux, but officially a few months prior. But to those who are stakeholders in my career, I would say in BCG, a little bit more lead time for them.
Right, got it. So what was it for you, Sarthak? When did you tell them?
I think for me it was expected. Everyone expected that.
Were you into a pre-MBA role at Blackstone?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So it's a pre-MBA role. So basically, after 4 years, you are expected to either move to an MBA or you decide to continue in the firm. But even during my preparation for the essay, everyone in the office knew, because I was taking help from the people who had applied to Harvard before. So everyone knew that I was applying and I was thinking of going there. And once I got into Harvard, then I think the answer was pretty straightforward that I'm going to go.
So what is the timeline? Like, for example, when did you get into Harvard? When did you quit from Blackstone? Like, like months and years, what would that be?
Yeah. So as we were discussing
Yeah.
previously, so this was 2020. After almost 3 years at Blackstone is when I started appearing for GMAT, and then I prepared my essay. So round one deadline for Harvard is September. So that is when I submitted my round one essay for the application for
And
Harvard.
did you had you already informed at this time to
Yeah.
Blackstone? Oh, okay.
Once I cleared the GMAT with a good score, I was sure that I'm applying.
Got it.
So even during the essay preparation, I had involved relevant people from the office. I had taken their views, advices on how I should make my essay, because like these guys have done it every year. So like people were involved, so they knew it that I was applying for my MBA. So September is when I applied. Then I got the interview call around November. My interview happened in November, and then I got the answer in December.
Okay.
So at December, it was clear that I will be going out, and then I still continued working at Blackstone for the next 6 months. So June end is when the pre-MBA role sort of ended. So till then I was working at Blackstone, though like everyone knew I will be stepping out in a few months.
And Harvard starts in August.
Howard starts in August end. Yes,
Got it.
August end. So I got like a month and a half of break
Got it.
before
Perfect.
joining.
And like just again to the three of you, like what are your thoughts on pursuing an international MBA versus going for an Indian MBA? Like let's say, why did you choose Stanford or like all these international universities and not, let's say, an IIM Ahmedabad or the top universities? What were the factors you considered there?
Again, just an N of one experience of my own. But in my case, my motivation, honestly, to do an MBA was the fact that I'd been in. This is not, again, atypical, but I'd been in Bombay my whole life before that, and I knew that my reason to do an MBA was I knew I wanted to get out of Bombay and out of the country.
Why?
I mean, because here's the thing, right? Your learning journey, again, not your learning, but my learning journey started plateauing at one point in time, which is that whatever the city had to offer, I at least from my, they say that you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And so that started I started feeling like this pond is not big enough, even though it's Bombay. And again, I don't mean to sound sort of horrible about that, but I wanted a complete transformation of the pond I'm in, and a radically changed pond in that sense. And so for me, my biggest motivation was that I wanted to go out of the country and truly sort of feel like a small fish in a big pond once again, and be around a whole set of stakeholders and individuals that I haven't normally got a chance to interact with, which to be fair, I don't know if ISB or IIMs would have solved the same sort of problem. It's not like I wasn't surrounded by incredible sort of at least from a startup background, so an incredible sort of venture VC individuals at VC firms, high performing individuals at VC firms and IB firms, and so on and so forth, which is usually the ecosystem that founders are surrounded by, if not your own sort of the industry that you're surrounded by or you're working in. But I don't know whether IIM or ISB would have given me any different than that anyway, and I wanted to sort of go change that up. And so my biggest motivation was that I needed to be out of the country to get a lot more international and exposure of a diverse cohort. That everything said and done, regardless of incredible education, I don't know whether the Indian schools have a good international mix of a cohort. And so my motivation was just that.
Yeah, I think, I've not heard any Indian B school having like students from outside India, like at least the way other B schools outside India have. So even, I also usually sometimes think that why are Indian B schools not able to attract the international talent? So I think that is something which is always going to be there. But yeah, so Indian MBA versus international MBA. So what about the two of you? Like, did you consider doing an MBA from India as well, or it was always Wharton or Harvard?
So in my case, I guess there were two reasons why I sort of looked at an international MBA, and I resonate to your answer about having that international cohort to sort of learn from. The way I looked at it, so the way I sort of learn and grow personally is by being around people and learning from them. So thankfully, because of Stephens, because of BCG, I got to be around a lot of really smart people, who from India, got to learn from them. So one reason was that, hey, here, if I do decide to go to an Indian MBA college, I'll still continue to meet great, smart and amazing Indian people. But this is a group of people that I'm anyway sort of, amongst and learning from. So in case I do decide to, spend like that exorbitant amount on an MBA, I wanted to maximize the learning that I would sort of get from the cohort aspect of that. So that was one sort of guiding factor. And the second was a little more pragmatic. I was just aware of the GMAT exam a little bit more, and I just had a little bit more confidence as to, okay, given a shorter time frame, I can turn around the GMAT in a really good way, as opposed to probably the time and effort it may take to sort of convert a CAT. And in case I do decide to change my mind at some point because of the validity of the CAT exam, I may need to sort of get into it again and get into that whole cycle of giving exams. So that was also a pragmatic reason why I thought, you know what, I'll just give the GMAT, have that on my plate, and then decide accordingly where I want to sort of take that, right? So that was sort of mostly the guiding reasons as to why I wanted to do an international MBA.
Yeah.
Fair.
I think for me it was again very similar. I think a change of scene and the kind of people that you're surrounded with at an international MBA is very different from an Indian MBA. Like IIM, SISBs are great academic schools, but I really wanted to broaden my own perspective of looking at the world, of looking at how different business is done. And I think that global MBA provides that, because they actually make sure that they create a class which has a very diverse background, both in terms of career, both in terms of thinking, and in terms of what they want to do eventually.
Yeah.
I think that perspective gets developed much more in a global MBA. And for me also it was more about, I think, the credibility and the branding that you get, which I was talking about earlier, that I wouldn't do an MBA if it wasn't for Harvard Business School. And since that was the case, then I just decided that if it's an MBA, then it's just HBS for me. Otherwise, neither Indian nor global schools are going to cut it.
So let's take a hypothetical situation. If Wharton and Stanford would have admitted you, you wouldn't have gone there. Or you wouldn't have applied only.
No, I didn't. I applied to Stanford to hedge my risks, because both Stanford, Wharton, all are amazing schools. I don't know what would I have done, but hand to heart, if I hadn't got into Harvard, I probably wouldn't have done an MBA. 99% sure.
Got it. Fair. And let's talk about the reasons which you guys did MBA from. Like one which you all three mentioned right now is basically the global exposure, international exposure.
Yeah.
Second is diversity, where you get to meet a lot of new people from different countries, and they're always going to be there with you for the rest of your life. Third is Sarthak mentioning about the global brand, which is like Harvard, Stanford or Wharton, which again you can carry for the rest of your life. Apart from these three, are there any other reasons that you thought कि हाँ इसकी वजह से अभी MBA करना चाहिए?
I mean, I want to take a page out of what he said, which is that for someone who's come from, and because that applies to me as well, what he said was that for someone who's come from a consulting or a math sort of background, the MBA is a good way to reset or like to potentially pivot. That, a lot of people do it for the pivot reason, right? You pivot from career A into, well, it opens up a whole plethora of career options. Yeah. And similarly, I came from a startup background. I had an inkling that I'm probably going to go back to startup, but you never know, and you never know what you're going to find out while the 2 years of business school. The most randomest of conversation, the most randomest places can like suddenly spark a thought process that after which you could land up doing anything after that. And so yeah, I think for me additionally as well was the fact that wait a minute, let's go back and reset from a clean slate. And you can actually, it is like a clean slate approach. And now you have the privilege or the advantage of several years of knowledge base before that. You've actually somewhat seen the world that you hadn't seen in undergrad, and so now you can make somewhat more informed choices, and you can actually decide to go into anything after that.
Right.
And schools let you do that. People who didn't come from PE background, they actually help you get into. Of course, it's harder than people who come from PE, for instance, as a background, but they do. There are examples of people who've gotten into spaces that were otherwise would be practically impossible to get into cold turkey had you not gone through the PE school path. Right?
I totally agree. I think that's one of the important aspects of why people do an MBA, because it's sort of a career reset. It's a pivoting moment. Like people sometimes are just done with the industries that they have been in. They want to do something else, and it gives you those 2 years where you are relaxed, where you have ample time on your plate to think about what is it that you want in life. And as soon as you get into HBS, and I'm sure it happens in Stanford and Wharton also, like the day one is when they start asking you, what do you want to do in life?
Yeah.
What are you thinking about doing in the next 2 years that will help you do what you want to do eventually?
Oh, wow.
So that's like, it starts from day one.
Correct.
And you think, you reset what you have been doing till now in your life, and now you have to get into that mode of strategically thinking what is the next phase in your life that's going to come. And that's how the entire journey starts. So that is a big focus for all MBA schools.
Right. But one question here. So 2 years is a very big time. So there's also an opportunity cost. अगर मैं इंडिया में रह के 2 साल कुछ स्टार्टअप खुद का चालू कर लूँ और maybe fundraise करके I can just raise good amount of money and build a career for myself, that is a big opportunity cost. So do you think that 2 years is like a long time for anyone to just think about what to do for the next 30-40 years, because I personally feel sometimes that 2 saal bahut zyada hai, and that is one of the reasons that I thought I shouldn't go for an Ivy League or let's say an Indian MBA. But what are your thoughts on that, about the 2-year like duration which is there?
Honestly, I think 2 years is a little stretched. I don't think you need 2 years to totally reset and think about these things. But also, like, maybe let me complete that part of the answer. So 2 years, it's pretty long. Even like at the end of my MBA journey, I was feeling like I've done this now for 1.5 years. The last half year was just traveling. It was enjoying. It was relaxing. I wasn't learning as much that I learned in the initial 1.5 years of the MBA. But then you think about it, 6 months in a long period of time is what I feel is the additional part of it. I mean, you can relax, you can enjoy, you can form deeper friendships during that period of time. And also, like MBA, such a 2-year break doesn't come very often in your career, right? So if you're getting that break, might as well maximize it till the time you can. Because once you get back on the treadmill, it's very difficult to take such long breaks. So I think it's a little stretched, but also there are positives attached to it. There's opportunity cost, no doubt. But one of the things that MBA helps you is in creating that safety net, right? You have that brand, you have that pedigree. So even if you lost those 6 months, I think you can recover those more during the remaining part of your career.
Got it. And what about 1-year MBA programs like INSEAD? You never thought of those kind of schools?
I think I'm the wrong person to
ask.
Actually,
you're the wrong person. I realized that later. But he's mentioned that HBS is his favorite. But for the two of you, like.
So slightly contrarian view. I am very pro 2 years.
Okay.
I feel like a college experience definitely should prioritize the learning and your outcomes from the B school itself, whether it be from a career point of view or whether it be from a learning point of view. But like I personally value like immersion into all of the various things that colleges have to offer and the community around you has to offer. I feel sort of really spending time in those is also a pivotal part of the school experience. In my case, for example, and I know this is going to sound a little weird because I've just been in college for like 6-7 months, but in my first semester, I was just asked, hey, do you want to work with the World Wildlife Fund to just, help figure out which sector to focus on in emerging economies? If it was a 1-year program, I probably would have said, please, no, I don't have the time. Let me figure out my own life, right? But I thought, you know what, let me pick this up, right? It allows you to do things you probably wouldn't do otherwise.
How was your experience there?
I had a great time there. I had
what did you do exactly?
So we wanted to so World Wildlife Fund, they have an impact funds themselves, and they wanted to sort of deploy those funds to investing in building sustainable solutions in some sector or the other. In the project that I was working on, it was in the food and nutrition sector, where they wanted to essentially figure out, hey, what is a cheaper and sustainable source of protein that they can sort of fund and grow and develop an ecosystem with in sort of developing economies. So we worked on developing that entire thesis from understanding, hey, what is the market of suppliers looking like, what is the potential demand for this, what are the who are the people who will most likely benefit, what are the synergies that exist across countries, what is the what is the implications environmentally on sort of developing an industry and doing this all of that. So this was sort of a 12-week effort that I would do probably from like 10 hours a week of commitment, but it sort of helped me in two ways. One, it sort of helped me think about the ESG space a little bit more, think about actually, hey, what is the, why I should sort of think about it a bit more seriously, more than what I would have earlier had done if I hadn't sort of done that. And secondly, even though I'm sort of taking a break from working and I'm in a purely academic construct, it helps just keep those muscles warm where I'm doing the right sort of critical thinking, which is a lot of outcome oriented, impact oriented, and working with stakeholders and all of that. So I think those two reasons are really why I had a very fun time. And obviously the team itself was like super fun to work with.
This was like a paid internship?
This was not a paid internship. Okay. It was just like a pro bono project that Wharton has. It's called the Wharton ESG integration project, where people who want to sort of dabble in the space either because they want to try it new as a completely new thing, or people who are passionate about the space want to sort of build credibility. So it's one of those projects that you can sort of pick up in college. So coming back, this is something I was always sort of exploring. Hey, the ESG space is something that seems interesting, but it wasn't like a core career passion of mine, right? So if it was a 1-year MBA, I probably wouldn't have done it, right? But I feel that I am better for it that I had done it. And I really attribute a core part of that as to having that luxury of time to sort of also do this alongside your career search and your academia and whatnot. So for those reasons, I see the value in a 1-year program, but I just wanted to sort of prioritize just trying new things as well. So for me, 2 years became like, hey, this is a good amount of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem too much at this stage.
Got it.
Yeah. No, and I want to further add to that, which is that I know a lot of people who like the fact that the 2-year program gives you the summer internship period.
Yeah.
And summer internship period, a lot of people actually, I saw from my experience that a lot of people do actually use that to experiment with things that they're just curious about, and they won't get a chance to try that post school in a full-time job, because then you're just playing. It's a safe space, right? And you can go experiment with whatever it is that you were curious about, but it's not a high stakes sort of position where after school then you're really committed to doing that, and you gotta run through with that in terms of your full-time career. And so at least at Stanford, a whole bunch of people and school is very entrepreneurship focused. So I know a very large percentage of the class goes and tries to spend the summer, and there's a lot of funding and fellowships that the school has structurally organized for a very large percentage of the class lands up testing out entrepreneurship in that summer, because why not, right? Because then if it's gonna fly off, of course 3 months sometimes is less to say, but it gives you a good sense of, wait a minute, you get to touch all aspects of entrepreneurship and try to build your own venture on campus, and so it's a great the 2-year program. That's a critical advantage of that.
Got it.
That doesn't come to
And these 3 months internships, how many of them are there in the 2-year program?
Typically, the way it's structured, and correct me if I'm thinking about this wrong, at least, is that you have your first full academic year, and you get your summer off, and you have a second full academic year. So you just really get this really cushy, depends on how the schools run it, but 4 months, roughly 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, I think 3.5 months.
Yeah, something like that.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
And summer meaning US summer, not, so which is June.
Like
It
May.
changes for you guys, it changes for West Coast, East Coast, but yeah.
Okay.
But for me, it started like May, end of May, sort of.
Yeah.
Mid-May to mid-August.
Mid-
So
yeah.
June, July, like 3 months.
Same thing for us, just push it further a month. So ours is mid-June to mid-September.
Got it.
But yeah, you get all of that time period off.
Yeah.
People travel, but then you can go have fun and experiment. Sometimes people stack up 2 different internships for half and half. One is they'll try out, because there's also another way, like a lot of people trying to break into consulting. A lot of people will do a consulting internship and then try to get their return offer right away then and there itself at the end of the summer, which is incredible, because then they've locked in their future after that, and they can spend the second year doing things.
And just to add to that, the summer internship may be like a fixed thing, but a lot of people that I know are also keen on looking at in-semester internships, which, while I sort of talked about a project for a more exploratory thing, the internship can be more of a reason to sort of, strengthen your credibility in the space, so that goes beyond just your summer internship, right? Again, that's something that a lot of people find valuable, but don't usually have the time to do if it's a 1-year program.
Correct.
So a lot of people, they take advantage of the 2-year program to explore a lot of opportunities like this.
Right. So are these in-semester internships more like live projects which people get, which is 15-20 hours a week kind of projects which they can do while pursuing semesters? Is that the concept?
So I'm going to give the cliche consulting answer. It depends. So there are those internships which has like a fixed amount of commitment expected, which may have like a few hours, but there's also those that are fairly equivalent to like a full-time commitment, in which case people do sort of flex on how many hours they spend on in the classroom itself, right? So it can truly vary from, what is the kind of internship you're looking for, what is the kind of intensity and the kind of commitment that you're really willing to give, right? And for people who are in different stages of their recruitment aspirations and journey, they prioritize one or the other, right? For some people, it's like, hey, I really, really need to get this done in order to get to my objective. So they are willing to put in that commitment, willing to sort of, reduce the number of credits that they're taking in the classroom, reducing the amount of commitment they're putting inside the classroom to sort of redirect that towards the employer. Or it could be that, hey, here is just like a little bonus that I want in my CV. So in which case they may be willing to put in fewer hours. Yeah.
Got it. Fair. Cool. So let's deep dive into your application process and even GMAT preparation, which is going to be like a very detailed segment also.
Yeah.
What I want to understand now is, let's say, let's make it very simple. Okay. So if there is someone like me, let's take an example. I want to go for an MBA next year in 2025, which is the August 2025 batch. So, what I want to know is now, when do the GMAT preparation start? When do the round 1 starts? Round 2, round 3, how many rounds are there? Then maybe interviews, and like finally, when do you get to know that okay, now you've been selected into Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton, whatever university it is. So what is the starting point to start an MBA journey? Let's start there, and then let's break it down topic by topic. So if anyone wants to take that.
Got it. I think let me take the lead on this. I think recency bias and whatnot. So if I were to target a round 1 application for next year admit, right? So I would look at it this way. I would first look at, hey, what is the sort of target profile of schools that I feel are relevant to me, either because of, hey, here from the kind of career that I have been in so far, this kind of school makes sense. This also fits in a lot of my ambitions and objectives. In the
Can you give an example?
For example, so I wanted to look at, hey, here I am someone who did consulting for many years, and I probably want to switch. So what is the best kind of college that I would want to consider in order to switch that, right? So Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Booth and KLOG were some of the schools that I had looked at. So I sort of talked to a few people to understand, hey, what is the kind of experience that the colleges offer, and then I finally sort of narrowed it down to 4 schools. I had applied to Wharton, I had applied to KLOG, I had applied to Booth, and I had applied to Harvard. And so I sort of planned for the timelines that these colleges have. And since I knew that I wanted to apply for round 1 to sort of maximize the entire journey of, if this doesn't happen, then I have more sort of bandwidth to apply to round 2, round 3, I sort of looked at September as the target deadline for submitting those applications. In my case, I had the GMAT done a bit earlier. I had done it the year prior. But
how long is this GMAT score valid for?
GMAT score is valid for 5 years unless they've made some changes. I think I'm not sure if they've made some changes this year, but otherwise the validity is 5 years, right? So I had applied, I had given the GMAT in year prior, so I was sort of fine. Even if this doesn't work out, we'll look at it next year. So step 1, target school, and that's closely aligned to GMAT. So GMAT / target school is my step 1. Step 2, once that's done, CV finalization is, I feel like, the next biggest step, because based on what you feel is the best representation of your entire sort of career and journey so far, that dictates 1, your confidence of converting these schools, and 2, what elements of your CV will you talk about in these essays. Step 3 would be thinking about the essay questions themselves, figuring out, okay, in each of these, here is this is a long process, so here is the kind of topics I want to talk about, here is the kind of version of myself I want to bring about, etc. Step 4 would then be, hey, one part of the application is getting the right recommendations. So who are those people who I feel are credible enough to give a good recommendation for me? And then step 5 will just be execution, right? Just going through multiple iterations of making sure that steps 2 through 4 are, like in the right version to then send to the college. You would send it. Step 6 would then be, if you get an interview invite, then thinking through the interview steps and whatnot.
Got it. Perfect. All right. So now these are steps, like 6 steps. So let's, for the next half an hour to 45 minutes, let's break each and every step down, and let's talk more on that. So the first is the GMAT preparation, right? So everyone who's now going to give GMAT, they have like this big question about like the preparation, how much time to give, what kind of questions will come, and how do you prepare for that. So if I may ask, what are your GMAT scores? Like 760 for you?
Yeah.
And for the two of you?
760.
760.
730.
730, got it. So I think like these are pretty high scores itself. And what is the average GMAT score which is expected in these kind of universities? Is there a range?
Yeah, so Harvard I think is around 740. Same, I think for Stanford 740.
Yeah.
And
The
Wharton
Wharton
730,
medians,
735.
I think Wharton median is also 740. The only caveat I'd give is, as an Indian applicant, you'd want to have 20 to 30 points above that in order to have a realistic chance at sort of converting that.
Got it. And this is out of 800, right?
Out of 800. Yes.
Got it. Fair.
By the way, also to add, GRE is also accepted.
Accepted now,
okay.
yes.
Got it. So and do
So there are
people
who,
give
there are
GRE
people who
also?
strategize that as well, because the two exams are different. If you all know more about this, you can speak into this. But one's better for verbal, one's better for quant, or different skill sets. In fact,
Yeah, I don't know, but I think GRE's verbal is tougher. That's what I've heard.
it's more
GRE is-
vocabulary based. I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also don't know a lot about it. But because I just prepare for GMAT. But GRE I think is better for people who have engineering backgrounds, is what I've heard.
Okay.
Because people also give GRE for masters in science.
Correct.
So it's for both. It's for both MS and MBA. So it's sort of a exam which caters to both kind
Fair.
of people. GMAT is only for MBA.
Any idea how many people in your batch would have given a GMAT versus a GRE?
I think it'd be 80% GMAT.
Yeah.
Okay, so majority of them give GMAT.
But just to clarify, in the eyes of the admissions department, they see it like for like, so that's okay. I don't think that they differentiate on that basis. But of course, the thing is that when a GRE number comes in, it's just that what does a 760 in GMAT equate to sort of a high score in GRE, and so each of them have their own like different strengths as well. But yeah, both are pretty well accepted.
Got it. Perfect. So let's talk about the GMAT preparation then. So how did you study for your GMAT, and how many months did you give, and like what are like some of the did you join coachings for that, and did you do it self-study, or maybe if you
so
can
wait,
throw
let
some
me
light
just
on
give a
that.
couple of clarifications about the GMAT. So one thing is that you can take the GMAT, it's unlike the CAT, right? Unlike the CAT, GMAT is not scheduled on any particular day. There are centers, you can just book you can book an online, you can book an appointment. In fact, now during COVID, I don't know if they did away with it or not in your time, but then an online GMAT and an in-person GMAT.
Yes.
But both are computer-based tests. One is you do it on your own laptop or PC or whatever. The other one you go to a center and you do it on their machine. But there are slots 365 days, and you can take the GMAT at your own choosing whenever you're comfortable. Big difference, right?
Okay.
Big difference. A and
CAT
B.
is once in a year.
Correct, once a year.
In November.
And the difference is that GMAT you can in fact take multiple amount of times, up to a max of 5.
I think it was 5.
5 or something of that sort. But you can keep taking it in, and you can choose to submit your best score. So it's not a fix that your last score is your best score kind of stuff. You can submit your best score. That's one. So just critically different, which is why so like I took it a bunch of times, and then I was like, okay, I'm 730 is where I'm going to get at it, so I gotta make the most of it. So that's key, right? Because because one challenge, interesting thing about GMAT is you get the score right away. You finish the exam end of the score, which is good and bad, but it's unnerving. And another thing about the GMAT test, see, I'm getting all the easy stuff out of the way, so the hard stuff is for you all about the prep and all, because this is just basic info. But the GMAT is a very interesting test because it is an adaptive test, right? Which is very interesting. It is like your Q1 will come up the way, and it's multiple choice only. Say it's math, whatever. Q1 comes up. The way you answer Q1, the next, so with two of us go into the same exam at the same point in time, we may get completely different set of questions, because it's from a central database of all possible questions, because it tries to, you get the first one right, it'll ask you a harder question. In fact, it'll keep asking you harder questions, because it's trying to judge your capability, and then it'll start going down if you start answering it incorrectly. So there's a better words to describe this, but it's basically in common man language. It's basically how it works, and so it's a very interesting test. And I think there are different strategies online. A lot of literature has been written and exists on the internet about strategies on how to sort of getting your first couple of questions correct or wrong has a different implication on your score than getting the last set of questions correct or wrong. There's a lot of that piece as well. But
you said GMAT can be given anytime in the next 365 days. So what is the frequency? Like, for example, if I want to give it tomorrow, like, is that possible?
So I'll tell you my case. I decided to do the MBA in May of 2020, and I applied in round 1. So by September, I'd done application, but I decided. So I start studying for the GMAT in May. And of course I worked on my essays for the last 1 month, which is very less.
And were you also working full time somewhere at that time?
Yeah, but it's COVID, so no one's disturbing you socially speaking. So
Got it.
I was working full time, but again, full time in COVID was everyone's trying to figure out what Zoom is, and anyway, so it's fine. I had ample time. Time was not the problem, fortunately. But I took the GMAT, I think 3 or 4 times so I took it. I felt like I could improve it. I studied a bit more. There is some rule on how quickly can you have successive GMAT appointments. I can't like take one now, take one tomorrow. There's some rule, and they keep evolving that. But within X, I think it's 2-week period or whatever, you can keep taking it a number of times till try to improve.
So every 15 days is what
something
I
of that sort, subject to not what the rules on the website says.
Got it. And what is the cost of taking this examination? Like, what is?
I forgot, dude. That's not something I sort of.
It's not. I mean,
it's not like CFA type.
It's not
huge.
It's not
very expensive.
It's not lakhs.
Yeah, it would be I think $500 or something. So 30,000
which is 40,000 rupees.
Yeah,
Got it.
used to be.
That's a lot. Now I'm thinking I shouldn't have. I don't know.
I think it was in that thing.
Okay, got it. So maybe you guys.
Honestly, I forgot.
The homework for you all.
Since since you guys, since you're earning so much that 30,000 इतना कुछ matter नहीं कर रहा तो दे देते हैं. Private equity people consulting.
It's in the context of what you're going to spend if you go to an MBA. If you're going to spend that much, then 500 is not.
Makes sense. What are the subjects in GMAT?
So as you were saying, so there's verbal and there's math.
Okay.
So verbal would
Only 2 subjects.
Only 2 subjects.
Okay.
Verbal is focused on your capabilities in English language. So it has, I think, 3 subparts to it. One is reading comprehension. Then there are 2 others,
Sentence
which
correction.
I don't remember.
And logical interpretation.
Logical interpretation. Basically, it's you have some paragraphs. The reading comprehension one is they give a paragraph, you have to understand the paragraph, and then there are subsequent questions on it. The sentence correction is sentence corrections. There might be some grammatical error or some error in that sentence. And then the third one is...
Yeah, in the logical one, they'd ask stuff like, hey, if this is an argument, is the premise strong? Can you strengthen it? Can you weaken it?
Yeah.
What is a reasonable insight or inference that you can derive, etc.
Yeah. No,
Is GMAT simpler than CAT, by the way?
I think so.
I
think
would
so,
agree,
yeah,
yes.
Did anyone of you give CAT by any chance? Did you did not even
No.
think? Got it.
No, but I think CAT requires...
We had the unanimous yes that it's easier, but none of us have actually done that.
Yeah, but I had the context. So my brother has given CAT.
Yeah.
So he did his MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. So he has prepared for CAT. And I've seen multiple other people prepare for CAT. And I think that's a totally different ball game.
Okay.
You actually have to take coaching for that. That's what I feel. There's so many coaching centers which have gotten developed because of that. I think with all Indian exams, it also requires a lot of rote learning, which is, I think, not required as much in GMAT because it's more logical and you have the entire question in front of you and you have to take the answer from that question itself, not bring in some outside and understand, or at least memorization of a lot of
Yeah, a
stuff.
key thing of GMAT prep is actually pattern recognition more than anything else. Like what he said, it's not rote learning because there's no rules per se other than you have to remember your geometry in maths, some formula you have to remember at best. But mostly it's about really pattern recognition because there's a very the main thing that most GMAT coaching online things will advise is that if you take those mock tests you take enough of them and long enough, you'll try to find that there's a certain way that they set questions, especially the difficult 700 plus level, because there is in the prep books you get like there are 500 to 600 level questions, 600 whatever, and then there's 700 plus level, then 750 plus level questions. There's really about pattern recognition because the thing is that there's no set number of questions that they are going to ask you in those 40 minutes or 1 hour, whatever. They can keep throwing more questions. Or actually, there's 42 questions. The trick is that it's about your ability to think in the moment with limited time. It's not about it's not brute force. In fact, it's about as elegantly as you can try to find what is the question, the way it's set, what are they really trying to guide you towards the obvious answers when most people will fall, and then wait a minute, it can't be obviously that simple, there's more to it, and so it's more about pattern.
So this is completely MCQ based, right?
Completely MCQ.
And how many questions are there?
Yeah, so he was saying, I think 42 each.
42 in verbal and 39 in...
42 in...
So they've reduced this now, but the similar scale, I think they, when I'd given it, it was around 36 in verbal, I think 33 or 32 in quant.
Got it.
And the timing is, I think
it was...
an hour each.
No, it was 1 hour each.
1 hour each.
Yeah, 1 hour.
And you decide which
So it's
section you want to do
I
first.
think all of this information is very readily available. I think you
Yeah, and
want
it's
to go on
also
GMAT
it's very
website.
dynamic. It keeps changing now. The
Okay,
pattern of
yeah.
GMAT is now slightly different, so don't have those exact sort of figures top of mind. I'm just trying to recall from the time I had given it.
Yeah,
And-
but I think the preparation is pretty
Very
straightforward.
similar.
The way to prepare is, I think, in twofold. The first part is you understand what the exam is about. So they have a full GMAT guide, which is a thick book with all types of different questions that they ask, historical questions that have been asked in GMAT, and as you were saying, they're categorized by the score level. So you prepare that, you understand what are the key questions that they're asking. Once you're comfortable with the different types of questions, you know what all you need to apply in order to answer those questions, you move on to the second part, which is taking mock tests, which is, I think, the most important part of GMAT, because when you take mock tests, and I think GMAT has a limitation, or official GMAT has a limitation on how many mock tests you can give. But there are plethora of other non-official mock tests that you can keep giving. And in those mock tests is when you realize that you're giving an exam to an adaptive question asker. So the questions that you ask correctly, then you will subsequently get more and more incrementally tough questions. And that is what prepares you. Once you do that like 5 or 6 times, you're comfortable, then I think you can realize by 4th or 5th test that I am getting this score in the range of 700, 720, 740, 760. And by that time, when you get to a stable state, that is when you realize, okay, now I think this is where I'm getting, now I should give the actual GMAT.
Yeah,
and that typically, unless you have a bad date, you will be somewhere plus minus 20.
Right.
Correct.
So you mentioned about the verbal part, 3 sections which were there, sentence correction, logic reasoning and all. So in the second, which one? Quant.
Yeah.
So what kind of questions are asked there? It's like pure mathematics?
It's like 8th grade math.
Yeah, have you given NTSE?
No, I have not.
So I think people give NTSE a lot, but NTSE has this quant part of the exam as well, which is basically logical reasoning in mathematics. So this is the most difficult part of mathematics. There will be multiplication and division.
Yeah.
There won't be differentiation. There won't be integration. It is just logical reasoning. You would think about, you in your school you were given this paragraph mathematical questions, like that a guy goes out, he does that, he does that, what will be, and then there are 5 things that he does and what will be the answer. So it's those sort of questions. It takes time, but it's basic mathematics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 8th grade math. Yeah, nothing more than 8th grade math.
Got it.
The only thing you have to really remember is like some formula for like volume of a sphere and like cuboids and whatever. Just that stuff, but beyond that,
something
you
a 4x3 pi r cube.
So just to elaborate on Sarthak's points on quant, right? The way he sort of divided verbal into 3 questions in quant are sort of 2 types. One is the problem solving in itself, where it's a very straightforward question, right? They tell you, hey, your point A and point B is so many kilometers apart. It took me X hours to reach there. What is the speed I'm traveling at? So the options will have, this is the speed A, B, C, D.
Okay.
The second kind of question is data sufficiency, where they give you a statement. You know, here is a statement maybe exactly similar, right? Where they'll tell you, hey, point A and point B is 10 kilometers apart. Then they'll give you 2 options, right? Option A will say it took X hours to get there. Point B may say that point C is another further 3 kilometers away.
Yeah.
And then the question will be, in order to calculate the speed, right, which of these 2 points are enough to answer the question? So it's not enough to say the speed is this much.
Yeah.
You need to be able to know which of those 2 options do you actually require, right? And in the MCQ, the options will be the first statement only is enough. The second statement only is enough. The first statement combined with the second statement is enough. Neither statements are enough, or either statements are enough, right? So, so that's kind of tricky to sort of approach that. Those were the 2 kinds of questions, but all quant questions fall into one of these things.
Got it.
But I think once you get that straightforward problem solving sort of comfortable, you are easily able to sort of approach this.
Right.
And there are also strategies to sort of think through that, right? For example, if you're able to figure out that one of the options is wrong, that automatically takes like 3 options out of the equation. So then you just try to figure out what is a better fit between 2 of the actual options in the exam.
Yeah, fair. No, very, very interesting. Did you guys join coaching for GMAT, or you did it self?
So I did it independently. I didn't join.
Independently.
All of you independently.
Yeah, I think there's enough books, literature.
Okay, and any reference book apart from the official GMAT guide you guys referred?
So honestly, from a reference guide point of view, the GMAT guide is like very comprehensive and like it's super efficient. But I wanted to sort of make sure that I didn't let anything fall through the cracks. So I I think I forgot, what is that forum? GMAT Club?
Yeah.
So GMAT Club has a lot of like reference questions, right? So Sanvar mentioned the 750 plus, 700 plus level questions. So I sort of, besides the book, sort of take a lot of time practicing those 700, 750 level questions to make sure that, I'm able to perform in those, because that was my sort of target score. And I also sort of over-indexed on the kinds of mocks that I did, right? So you mentioned that the official GMAT allows only a fixed number. I think there was 6. But I sort of, I bought a lot of third-party mocks, and I sort of really spent a lot of time just doing all of these.
Which kind of third-party
So
mocks?
These companies keep changing because they keep shutting down and setting up. But when I had bought mocks from Veritas and from Manhattan.
Okay.
So I think each of those gave me like 6 mocks each. But the pool of questions that they had was rotating, so I could sort of reset and do another mock again, and have a completely different experience, right? So I essentially had like a set of 18 mocks to sort of work through.
My God.
So I spent a lot of my time doing the mocks in itself and learning from my mistakes as opposed to just learning everything and then sort of going.
So you gave all those 18 mock exams?
I gave all those 18 mock exams.
That's a lot.
So my process was a lot, and we'll come to the preparation side of things, but besides these 3, there genuinely wasn't any other coaching that I joined. I think online you have a lot of just videos available, webinars or whatnot of like either coaching institutes or some topic experts speaking about strategies. So whenever I felt like here's a topic I'm uncomfortable with, for example, I had like a lot of issues with sentence correction initially, trying to figure out, hey, what are the kinds of ways they would ask sentence correction questions. So I'd watch a couple of YouTube videos to understand which would substitute the idea of a lecture for me, and then just go into a lot of practice of 700, 750 questions on sentence correction until I got sort of familiar with it.
So how many mocks you guys gave? Do you remember?
I think five
Got
or
it.
6.
So ideal would be what, 5-6 mocks to give?
Depends. I think till the time you are confident and comfortable with that, you understand what types of
Got it.
questions are coming, and you reach that steady state. It's
Yeah.
not as volatile
Fair.
in each mock test that
And
you give.
how many months you took to prepare for your GMAT?
I took, I think, 1.5 or 2 months.
Okay, that's-
So
yeah.
initial 2 or 3 weeks was the first part which I was describing. So getting to understand what the exam is about, and the remaining 3 weeks for mock tests.
Wow. Okay, cool. I think this helps a lot. Any other preparation strategy before we move on to the step 2? Anything you guys want to add?
I mean, I took a slightly different approach to preparing for the GMAT in itself. Like, I gave my first mock with absolutely zero prep. Like, I was fully comfortable knowing that I was gonna get half of them wrong, because
A lot of guys do this, by the way.
Baseline.
yeah, right. So
What is it called? Sorry?
Just
baselining, right? So I would, and this approach I sort of keep going, right? I'd figure out, okay, here are the kind, and then I do like a lot of analysis into what are the topics, what are the kind of questions, what is my accuracy within each topic, within quant, within data sufficiency, within problem solving, to sort of figure out all of my weak spots there.
What was your first score? First mock?
Honestly, I think 710.
Wow. This is a good score. I mean, first mock was 710.
I think it's doable. I think
Wow.
that is like for most of like Indian aspirants, I think it's a reasonable first attempt ho jata hai. Like a lot of my friends also had given their first attempts. I think their ranges were also in the 680 to 720 range. So did that, and then I sort of used these 18 mocks as like a baselining plus, right? Every time I'd give a second mock, I just try to do my best of just trying to figure out the weak spots and do like learning for it. But even if I had not completed it, all of it, I would just jump into the second ones. So one, I would do that, and second, one pitfall I realized was the official GMAT mocks are actually really misleading. I don't know if you guys felt that. I want to hear your perspectives, but like from my own experience and from the couple of folks who had actually given this, they actually give a very easier impression as to what the actual exam is going to be. Like in my case, I had given the official GMAT ones, and I gotten like super high ones. I think it reached like 780 at one point. And then my final was like much tougher. Like the actual experience of giving the questions, I knew that I had to think at a much more harder level. And this experience resonated with a few others. So I wouldn't just, so based on those sort of, n equal to 3 sample, just don't rely on only GMATs, right? That's the reason I sort of invested in the other ones, because they were claimed to be harder than the actual exam. So I wanted to practice on the harder ones to make sure that the actual exam was sort of similar. So those were the two things I sort of did differently as opposed to just, prepare topics and give exams.
Got it. Yeah, very, very interesting and insightful. Perfect. So I think we've covered a lot on the GMAT prep and strategy part. Let's move on to the step 2. So step 1 now GMAT is done.
Yeah.
Now step 2 is the application process, right? So this is now where the essay writing begins, right? This is the step 2. So how do you then prepare for these essays, and what kind of questions are asked, and what kind of answers do you guys write on these essays?
Broadly, I think the application, once you do the GMAT, which...
So let's take my example only. So I gave my GMAT in May 2024.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I score 720 वगैरह score मान लेते हैं, and then next, so what is the next step and when? So now application will start in which month for August 25?
Typically, most schools open their applications like May end or so.
Okay.
That is when the next year's recruitment process starts for these schools. So that is when you start thinking about which schools to... I think you already have thought about which schools to target, but then you think about how to structure your essay for each of those different schools, because each school has a different essay question. Most of them have something different. So Harvard has just one essay question, which is tell us more about yourself, which we can't get from your CV or from your application.
Which
so
I just asked. Which I asked in the
would you
introduction.
yeah, similar to that.
So
like
thinking
what
on the right
else-
track.
That's a good one. Yeah, good.
But yeah, so the question is, what else would you want us to know about you, which is not covered in this? Then Stanford has 2 questions. I don't know if they have changed recently, but they used to be, what do you value most?
No, what matters to you most
Yeah.
and why?
Yeah.
So these are 2 questions.
No,
This is one.
like what matters to you most. And why.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other one is, of course, the standard one, which is like, how will
Stanford help you
kind of stuff.
achieve whatever is you value the most?
Okay.
And Wharton also has like 2 or 3.
Yeah, Wharton, I had only 2 questions. One was, very similar to the Stanford question. How will Wharton sort of fit into your career goals? And secondly, how will you contribute to Wharton was the second question, which I feel is different from both Stanford and Harvard.
Yeah. No, that essay is one part which I think we should talk in detail about. But along with essay, the application has other components as well.
Yeah.
So it has your CV or your resume, which is a one-pager document typically, and which would have everything that you have done till now. Then there would be some small application questions which are career-based, education-based, like what did you achieve in your educational career, like what all your achievements in your career, what all have you done. So there would be 3 or 4 questions on the 2 biggest things that you've done in your work life, one thing that you failed at, something like that. Very, very small, short answer questions, basically. So that is resume, this is the application, and then there's essay.
And recommendation.
And recommendation. That is the 4th and final piece, which is getting recommendation, 2 recommendations usually for each B school from people who you have worked very closely with.
Yeah.
These are the 4 broad components of it.
Okay.
I think the resume is straightforward. I think people do that day in, day out for their work life as well.
It's very similar to the corporate resume, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
one
just
which
one thing I would highlight is for B schools, typically you want to create a very well-rounded profile. So you might have good academic scores, you might have a decent work career as well, like at a good place you might have good work experience, but also you need a third thing typically, which can be co-curricular activities, which could be giving back to the society, the social aspects of your life. So these are like 3 components to create a well-rounded profile, and you should put that in your resume. And
Got it. Any specific format to follow, like academic qualifications, then work ex, then positions of responsibility, which is the IIM format?
Yeah, I think mine was this nothing.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
Okay.
usually, but typically people have work or education front, then second work or education,
Got
and third is the extra co-curricular
Cool.
activities.
Got it.
But that is the resume part. Applications again very straightforward. Whatever you want to highlight in your work experience, whatever you want to highlight in your academic career, and then recommendation and essay are 2 parts which I think we should.
So
talk
let's
more about.
let's spend more time on the essay part. I want to hear from all 3 of you. What did you write in your essays, and how did you structure it in a manner which will impress the person who is going to examine the application?
Sure. I can go first. So Stanford's prompt question is what matters to you most and why? And just as a quick sort of thing on this, which is that as you can imagine, these admissions teams have actually, well, they've seen it all, right? Across these schools, at least, they've seen it all. They get what, like 8 to 10,000 applications for what, 400 to 1,000 positions. And so they've been doing this for a long time, and so they've really seen it all. And so I think that the general advice that I was given I did take the help of an admissions consultant, and so the advice that I got was straight out of the bat, your essay needs to like come out like your first paragraph's got to have something that keep their attention going, so that they continue investing that time reading the rest of the stuff that you've just gone on and on about. Because as you can imagine, these people are just like scouring through very impressive incredibly impressive profiles in the thousands, right, and trying to make these very quick decisions. And first impressions in these kind of things really do matter, and so you're trying to grab their attention. And the essay is, I don't know, none of us actually seen from the inside of the admissions department, but the essay seems to play one of the more critical roles. Like GMAT, the essay, resume, but like the essay is very, very important. So top 2, top 3 level of like criticality, right?
Is there any word limit for these essays?
There are. They're very,
Yeah.
What's
Some
the
schools
word?
do, like Harvard doesn't, but GSB, like Stanford has a
Stanford has,
very
yeah.
strict
Wharton
rule
also
about
has.
Wharton
it.
has, yeah.
What's the word limit?
It's not a lot.
So in
Like
Wharton-
700 words?
No,
something?
Stanford was 700 plus 500. I remember.
correct,
So
correct,
2
yeah.
questions, 700 one, 500 the second.
Wharton's was 500 and 450.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
exactly, right? And you can't go on and on kind of stuff. And critically, before you even get to the end, the advice was that the opening paragraph really matters a lot for them to continue being invested in. Should I even bother with the rest of this essay or not? I mean, I don't know if they really do it like that, but seemingly that's how it would be. And so I think that in my case, I'd come from a startup background, a social entrepreneurship background. So the hemp company was we were for profit, but social impact focused for Uttarakhand farmers. And so it was, and again, you got to really sort of keep in mind the school you're applying to. Of course, and I applied to the other schools as well. But there is this bit of like you got to do this good match between what you suspect the school is looking for versus sort of what part of your profile to come out. One key thing that all admissions teams always constantly, when you do these info sessions, you join, because and all like what all of these schools have ample amount of info sessions. They even show up in person. They do events in India as well.
How do people get to know about these?
They have
events,
a very good website. I mean, all of the admissions, all of these have an events section where you can sign up. You get the constant newsletters, and if they're going to be in your country, you'll get advance notice in the major cities. Show up, and I would separately do recommend that. By the way, you should. And I was on the admissions. I was an admissions ambassador once. I was at Stanford, and so we got trained in how to look out for new candidates and kind of stuff. And one of the things the admissions team did actually train us on is that, as ambassadors of the school now, if people are applying, it's but natural that if the admissions team has seen you around in info sessions online or showing up at the school, because these schools also host in person. Of course, now it's a different thing for Indians to fly all the way there, but say somehow you can, or you're going to be in the US anyway. They take you you can do a day in the life off, even before you've applied. So you can go attend classes and things of that sort. So the key thing I'm trying to get at here is that if there's name recall, there's brand recall of your name in the eyes or the minds of the admissions department, it can only help, right? Because you're not an unknown entity to the admissions department. They've seen you around. You may have asked a pretty interesting question or two, and that's an advice, by the way, I give most people who ask me for like admissions. I always tell them that, hey, ask smart questions and try to ask questions to the admissions department that it's going to prompt someone to think, and rather than copy paste from a generic FAQ, which of course they have a generic FAQ set of most people ask, but ask something that's unique. Come up with something, like ask something that, hey, what do students do what is usually on the mind of students in the evenings, or like what do they whatever. You can ask something culturally associated with the school to try to get an insight of the school. Why I'm saying that is because admissions teams are going to constantly sort of say that, hey, authenticity really matters a lot to them. Try to be your actual original OG sort of authentic self to the school, and yes, but there is a thing where almost as if and you can really see it through the verbiage or the language that each of these all these schools use. There is a little bit of a profile of what a typical Stanford sort of student looks like, which might be different from the Harvard and the Wharton and so on and so forth. And so, in fact, even from in your own heart of hearts, you have to see that, hey, where am I even more vibing? Of course, if you had the luxury of choice kind of thing, but that you have the essays that your essays are your real place for that to come out. Out of the gate running. And in my case, it was clear, I was resonated with Stanford, and I really did resonate. It was my number one pick, and I'm glad that they accepted me. But my essay at Stanford is where I really got to shine, and I got put in the work saying, hey, here's what I think your school stands for, and here's where it fits in my profile, and here's where I can really make that good argument in my essay. So this is my comments on the essay. So I wrote mine very deep, focused on creating positive social impact, but using entrepreneurship as for-profit entrepreneurship as a means of doing that. That's what the journey had done before. I know Stanford loves that. So I did. So I'll give you an example of why, to tie this long monologue, but to tie it back in, is that in Stanford's admission, when you get admitted, you get this letter, the admissions letter. So you admit, congratulations, welcome to the class or whatever. And on the bottom right section, the admissions director at my year was Kirsten Moss. She hand writes, so all the 400 who get admitted, or how many ever finally make it, she writes a personal note, like a 2-line paragraph or whatever. And all the people who got admitted, she picks up things from your essay and writes in there, saying that in your essay it was this that resonated with us, and we can't wait to be a part of your journey and help you get to this point that you've only put across. So it really does play.
What is it? What was it for you? What was mentioned?
I think in my thing it was something to do with the theory of change, or I forget. I'll be able to pull it up. But it was the whole idea that it was this notion of magical realism, which is that because in my story, just a quick sort of shout out there, was that we'd use bhang plants in Uttarakhand to make bhang farms in Uttarakhand, which otherwise you would think are illegal and narcotics and whatever. But farmers in Uttarakhand were now, at the end of the hemp journey of those 8 years, farmers in Uttarakhand were growing hemp bhang, but they were supplying that as fabric to Levi's and Patagonia. And we'd become the default supplier of sustainable fabrics. And so 2,000 plus for farmers in Uttarakhand in Chamoli and Almora districts were, their lives have been transformed. They're making, that our chief farmer made 98 lakhs in my final year of my Bohiko.
Wow.
And so which is more than my entire payroll of my company combined, right? But it's suddenly what you thought is just, it's it's too good to be true. It's like almost like magic that can you use. So that's a big part of my like journey and my motto and my essay. And the things you have to have a unified profile, right? Your essay, your resume, your application ka pieces, your records. It's like they have to speak a unified version of you rather than here he's the finance dude in the resume is coming finance IRR and whatever, but here he's talking about impact. No, I mean it has to be cohesive. It all has to fit in as one unified version of you, and it is because that's who you are and your authentic self. And so she wrote a little note there saying, I'm a big believer in your journey of magical realism, and Stanford wants to continue supporting that. So essays are very critical.
On the admissions consultant, how much do these admissions consultants charge usually?
Oh, they vary a lot. I've heard some mad numbers.
How much was it for you?
Mine was not a lot. It was like I was just taking advice. And this person had never admitted anyone to any of these schools.
Oh, is it?
So like I should have not. But it was just for like, it was more for my own doing, which is someone to keep me on track and like to this thing. But I think I'd pay like 35 to 40K or something for the whole package, which is very
I've
low.
heard I've heard some people charge 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs. And depending on, they also tell that 5 applications, 5 schools ka contract hai, package hai.
Yeah, there's some package which goes on. There's some domestic consultants and then there's some international consultants. That's where it varies the most.
Did you guys use?
I used an admissions consultant who like a lot of people I knew had used.
And how do you find them? So by just reaching out to someone who has used it in the past?
Yeah, I knew other people who had used their services, so I reached out to their.
Can you guys name some of the top consultants whom people can reach out to?
There are very famous ones in India, but the one I used was a website called accepted.com.
Okay.
And there was a consultant, Jennifer Bloom, who I think now has started on her own, so she's not anymore part of accepted.com, but she helped me quite a bit, and she was readily available for all the iterations. I think people do end up doing like 30-40 iterations of their essay.
Yeah. My God.
Yeah. I think for my GSB one, I did some 15-18 iterations. For HBS, I did 30-35 iterations.
My God. How much did you pay to this admission consultant?
I think, but it was in the lakhs.
Okay. Got it. So again, same mindset ki 1.5 crore ka fees hai, to lakhs matter nahi.
For me it was also very difficult because I hadn't made up my mind to actually but I thought if I'm applying then might as well apply for force. But I think Sanvar covered a lot of it. But in the essay, I think that one version of you that you want to portray across all your aspects of your application is the core thing. And there has to be authenticity, a lot of it. What have you done till now and how that will form part of your long-term career. But also you have to align it to what the school is looking for. I think and that's where the admission consultants help, because they have had a lot of people who they have helped frame the story well for that particular school, and then they have been able to actually place them within the school. So that is where that help comes through. So they usually, all these consultants initially have long questionnaire, which has like a 20-30 page questionnaire. They have prepared questions where you have to write almost everything and anything that you have ever done in life. And that's where they pick up bits and pieces and they try to structure your story which will fit well for a particular school. And that's where I think the biggest help of those consultants are.
Right.
And then of course then improving your verbal, improving your grammar, improving the way you're phrasing things is the second part of their help.
Right. So what was the question for you and what did you write there?
Yeah. So for me, I remember the Harvard one more clearly.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, Harvard is very broad. It's just tell us about yourself, which is not covered anywhere else, which is basically tell us about yourself fully. I mean, like you want to cover everything, anything and everything there. So I started with my core principles, which are very core to me, which I want to stay true to always. Like I started with my religion. I started that. I've been following that for a long time. That is very core to me. And I always want to use that wherever I go, and I want to stay true to that wherever I reach. So that was the starting point for me.
Just again on a separate note, how come you're so religious, by the way? I mean, and how have you stayed so religious? Because a lot of people, when they move outside their houses, I mean, they usually lose their track. Although I know it's not relevant to the conversation, but still.
Yeah, I think this is a sort of a digression, but like while I was growing up, I've seen my parents follow religion a lot, and my mom and my dad are my role models, have been so for a very long time. And like my dad built his business from grounds up, and he is, I think, the most authentic and the most genuine guy I know. And he's a core hard worker, and he's a very, very nice guy. Like, and that's where I think I am a Jain, so the Jainism principles of non-violence, of not lying, of staying true to of like not accumulating wealth to some after some extent and giving back to the society. I think all those principles resonated with me. I'd seen them growing up, and I really respect those principles, and I want to stay true to that. So
very interesting. So did you include all these things in your essay, these principles?
Yeah, I think some of them, I think which were relevant, because again, you don't want to give a full spiel of your religion to the reader as well, right? So whichever were more relevant. I think for me it was, although I come from a PE background, I'm a finance guy, but and this is not a marketing spiel. This is like I really like giving back to society. I really like helping people who are disadvantaged, and that is, I think, one of the core principles that I learned from Jainism. That don't accumulate wealth for yourself, accumulate things, but then help others. Actually, use that wealth to help others. And that was the core principle that I started with. That has guided me till now, and that is what I put in my essay as well. And then I laid out how my journey has been over the years, during my school days, during my childhood, during my school days, how I use that, during my college days, how I use those principles, and even during Blackstone days. Like, Blackstone is a private equity shop. You're in there to make money, but I had an opportunity to actually raise financing for one particular non-profit organization in Mumbai called Magic Bus. So I used that opportunity. I prepared a full deck for Magic Bus in Blackstone, and then I pitched it to the Blackstone's NGO arm, which is the non-for-profit arm. And then I raised $100,000 for that non-profit in India. So that was, I think, one of the biggest components of my essay, which made me stand out against other peers. And then I finally ended my essay with how I want to use my learnings at HBS, what I've learned till now, to actually build something that is not just making profits but also generating in society, good in society, and focuses on double bottom line, as people say, and not just on single true north of making profit. So that was my essay, and I think a lot of other parts of the application also tied into it. My core principles tied into it. So created a very authentic picture, which is true, but also there's a lot of marketing also. I mean, you can't just say that I'm this guy, I don't want to market myself, I don't want to be salesy. You have to be very salesy, and especially I think in the US culture, you have to be very salesy. You have to speak what you stand for, and I think that was an initial journey for me. In my final essay, it came out very clearly what I stand for, what I've done, and what I want to do, and that is how that journey shaped.
Got it. Perfect. Very, very interesting. Just one quick question here. So when you said that you had written like the essays and also like the principles and all were mentioned, then experience of your school, college. So do you guys also write some anecdotes or incidents from the schools? And
that is what actually adds the authenticity to it. Like, you can write anything globe, but it doesn't become real unless you have the anecdotes to back that up.
Fair.
And then, like, again, you can also cook up anecdotes. Like, it's not
that's what I was going to ask. Like, is it mandatory सब सच बोलना है उसमें, या कुछ झूठ भी मतलब उसमें डाल सकते, like something which is
I mean, it depends. Typically you shouldn't, because eventually in the interview for Harvard, the thing is, the interview, till the time you reach the interview, they have already made up your mind that you are a good candidate. The interview is just about fact checking. It's about checking what you have written is actually true. So they ask deep questions on what you have written.
Got it.
So by the interview time, if you have just faffed about it, then you will probably lose.
Got it. Did you mention in your essay you met Stephen Schwarzman and you worked with him and all?
I don't remember now.
I saw your photo with him.
Yeah, I met him, and this was actually during when I was fundraising for this non-profit.
Okay.
So I went to New York. I met him in the US, and then I won that 100,000 grant for that.
Did he write the letter of recommendation? Just kidding.
No, the interaction was as much as it looks in the photo. This is just one photo. And we coincidentally were sharing stage, and that's all it was.
Wow, that's lovely. Akshay, over to you. Your essay question and answer.
Yeah, so the essay questions were, as I previously mentioned, right? Like, how does Wharton sort of fit in your goals, and how can you sort of contribute to Wharton? And the points that these guys made like completely resonate, right? You have to be extremely authentic. You also have to make sure that it's closely aligned with what they're sort of looking for, and that authenticity should come from anecdotes stuff. I think one part of the Wharton essay that sort of slightly is different, at least from what I've heard, is that Wharton sort of places a higher emphasis on your knowledge of the Wharton ecosystem and your understanding of the Wharton ecosystem. So I think, and I had also worked with an admissions consultant to sort of figure this part out, right? I think you mentioned working with Jennifer. I had worked with an Indian admissions consultant, Rajsi Chimney at Admissions Gateway. And it was a similar discovery process. I had spoken to a lot of my friends on who had gone to Bschools before, both at Harvard and Wharton and other schools as well. And one factor that sort of made that decision for choosing this guy was the fact that given that I am an Indian who's always been an Indian, haven't worked internationally, I felt that this person may be able to better resonate with my own story and help sort of, put that on the essays and, help shape that in a much more better way, just by sort of having that better understanding. So
do these guys also charge basis the conversion कि अगर select हुए तो ही पैसे दोगे, or they charge irrespective?
I think in my case it was flat.
Okay.
I think that would break their revenue.
But it was also some of the package things, right? I think it was a 6
How
school
much
thing,
did you pay?
6 school thing at like some 80 to 1 lakh per school. So it
okay.
came to, I forgot the exact thing, but with
Yeah.
tax, etc. I think between 5 and 6
Got
maybe
it.
for the entire thing. Yeah.
Got it.
But anyway, coming back to the thing,
Yeah.
right? So for the aspect of understanding the ecosystem, one needs to really go beyond just looking at the website and looking at, let's say, the courses that they list are available, the professors that they list are teaching these courses, the various programs that they have. In order to build that understanding, you really need to get out there and talk to people in the schools themselves, be it students, be it alums, or be it like professors, right? Having that understanding of, hey, here is why I believe this program is great, right? For example, in my case, like I came from consulting, and the story that I wanted to put in is sort of aligned with my goals itself, that, hey, I wanted to sort of build on my experience in consulting, but remain in the strategy function, because that's something that's, it's always interested me, and it's always sort of kept me going, right? Even in consulting, I worked for 5 years when a lot of my other friends and who joined as associates would leave, at like 2 to 4 years, because I truly enjoyed the problem solving element of things, right? So because I want to remain in strategy, I feel that this one particular course that Wharton has called Strategy and Competitive Advantage that Professor Sigalkot teaches, right? I feel this is the right fit because this course has ABC elements, and this I heard from one of the students who had taken it last year. This was the guy I spoke to, and this is why I'm convinced that this course fits this aspect of my career plans. Right, so similarly, I would sort of build that further, structure that entire story around a similar set of principles. Here is the part of my career goal that I feel Wharton can address. Here are the 2 things within the, or 2 or 3 things within the Wharton ecosystem that can help me address that. And here is why I believe that is true.
So what are the answers to these questions?
So in my case, it was because I wanted to sort of, so 2 things I had sort of highlighted in my essays, right? One, strategy that I really liked. Second, I spent a lot of time in BCG's transformation practices. So I wanted to sort of focus my pivot on working with, let's say, technology organizations within, let's say, a strategy or a growth focused role to sort of deliver the kind of impact that I was able to see in what was possible in transformations. So the parts of the Wharton ecosystem that I would call out would cover both of these elements. So strategy and competitive advantage was one, operations as a field would be another, and leadership programs that Wharton had to offer would sort of empower me to sort of, make sure that strategy and ops were sort of executed in the right way. So then these 3 became like the core pillars of, what my story would contain. And me with Rajdeep and I would sort of work through, okay, is this the best version of that story coming out? So for example, for strategy, I mentioned that this particular course with this particular professor. For operations, similarly, there would be a course that's there, but hey, Wharton also has something called global modular courses and global immersion programs that sort of take you to a country of relevance for a particular topic. For example, if there is a global course on supply chains, so Mexico has interesting supply chains. So Wharton will sort of design a program that makes you spend a week in Mexico, meet with people who are actually supply chain leaders and also like other stakeholders within supply chain functions to sort of ground the learnings that you are sort of learning on a theoretical classroom basis with real world implications. So I would say that for my operations part, hey, here is what is relevant. For the leadership side, hey, Wharton has leadership ventures. Wharton has leadership intensives, which the ventures can be like, really ambitious things where you go to Patagonia and you do like a trek there. You go to Antarctica and you do like a trek there. Or it can also be intensives where you spend a day with New York's fire department to sort of, do like this full training to understand how to respond to crisis and all of that. So those are the things that I felt were, hey, this experience may help me sort of respond to pressure much better, may help me become, leader under stress much better. And this will sort of help me enable how best I execute strategy plus operations and whatnot. So that's how I would approach like part 1 of the Wharton essay, which was how does Wharton sort of enable your goals. Wharton's second essay was, how can you sort of contribute to Wharton, right? And similar to what we discussed about having authenticity, having anecdotes, and sort of, making sure you're really tying both of those pieces together in the multiple parts of your essay, that still sort of carries over to this part, right? And for this, my approach was slightly different. I needed to really introspect as to what parts of my profile were sort of, or what parts of my experiences thus far were like the most relevant that I'd want to bring to a B school. For example, in my undergrad, I spent a lot of time quizzing, and I was in the quiz club. So that I was really passionate about quizzing and leading clubs as a sort of byproduct to that. So hey, quizzing was something that I really wanted to sort of bring into Wharton as an ecosystem. While let's say trivia events and pub trivia happens like as a general out of college event, the Indian style of quizzing is really different than trivia, right? I think trivia that what I've seen in the US is always just a Q&A about a fact. Hey, do you know who the exit president of the US is, or something like that. I really like the Indian style of quizzing because it's much more riddle based. They tell you facts and interesting stories about things that you likely already know, right? So it's always like a fun discovery process. So that style of quizzing is something I sort of also wanted to bring into Wharton. So that became one. I also had founded the consulting club in Stephens, and that coupled with the 5 years of experience that I've actually have with consulting, I said that, this is something that I've always been passionate about. And even though I'm pivoting from the career now, it's still a career that I really, respect highly and see a lot of value in. And I sort of want to be involved with Wharton's consulting club to sort of help train future aspiring consultants and whatnot. I'd also, in college and beyond, had spent a lot of time sort of, working as a mentor for like a lot of people for some topic or the other. It would either be, helping sort of policy researchers draft their papers a bit better. It may be, helping undergraduates think of career options and, helping some mentorship for one reason or the other. So Wharton has a lot of undergraduate mentorship programs, a lot of youth mentorship programs for outside the UPenn bubble for people who are living in Philadelphia who may be sort of looking for advice. So that's something I felt would sort of, be something that I'd be keen on participating. So a lot of, elements like that, right? I sort of think about what elements of my profile are relevant, credible, what would add value to Wharton, bring that up, right? So that became like the essence and pillars of how I would approach the second essay.
Got it. Perfect. What factor, like if you guys were to just break it down, what weightage would you give to each of the things which we just discussed? Like GMAT ko kitna weightage hoga, applications pe kitna hoga, essays, LOR, and resume mein kitna weightage hoga? Which would be the most highest weight?
Very tough to say. I think differs from school to school also. But I would say essay is the highest.
Okay.
Wherever it would be, maybe 60% of it would be essay.
So GMAT would not be the highest.
No, I think GMAT is more of a clearance thing. If you are above a certain level, then I think you're good enough.
Okay.
Then incrementally doesn't matter more. If you're 760, 770, so like anything above 720, 730 should be good.
Like I'll give you an example. In my case, I am actually a good 10, 20 lower than my class's GMAT average. And as an Indian male, that's even harder because that's odd that happened. But yeah, because it's the essay and it's all the other pieces that stacked up pretty well, which is why I think that they were okay with such a lower.
I think your farmer story would have really touched them.
I guess. But but that's the thing, no? Because your other places where you get to sort of overcompensate for if, so they do, and all. They're not just taking like highest GMAT picking may say and then they start interviewing them. No, they do. Fair. And in fact, these schools publish each class profile where all the demographic data is there, how many internationals, what is the mix of all the different stuff. They always give a GMAT range. And if you see the GMAT range, there are GMAT ranges that go into the 600s as well. Or in fact, late 500s.
What are you
600s.
saying?
Yeah, they are, of course.
I didn't know that.
No. Of course there are, because but of course most of the in your class, the cluster of people who are in the 600s who are also in these classes are usually then military vets. Or a lot of other profiles, sports like Olympic gold winner. You won Olympic gold, but you're 650. Man, you've led your contingent into like.
But why are they doing an MBA at Stanford? I mean,
Harvard, all of that's in all of the schools.
Yeah, a large contingent of military.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, good 10% of my class.
but why? Like,
I
what's
think more than that for us. I think
I'm
almost
sure.
20% or so.
like what reason for them? I mean,
Transition, no, for them. I mean,
they're I think the idea is they've left the military and they want to move to corporate.
Okay.
So that is MBA is the stepping stone for them to actually.
Same thing, pivot for them as well.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of skills. Like they have led teams in high stress situations. And those are the skills that they bring to the school, and then they learn about finance, about businesses, and then they can leverage those skills into the corporate business.
oh, wow, pretty
So it
interesting.
shows one thing, the takeaway is that it shows that the GMAT, there is variability. It depends on then, of course, try to get a high score, but then you have all the other pieces as well to really like put in a great profile. And there are exceptions to the rule. There are people from India who've gone in the 680, 690 as well into some of these schools as well, but you've got to crush it in your other parts.
Yeah, got it. Cool. So now the GMAT is done. The round one is so like let's say May 24 I give the GMAT. When does the round one deadline end?
September.
Yeah, these guys are first.
September,
So there's always, if you open up the calendar and you go each of their websites, they all publish their round one deadline. It's a period, like he said. The period starts. There's a period in which you can submit your application at any point in time. They'll anyway go into review only after, or it's some rolling thing. I don't think it's any advantages to submit before, like in mid-August. I think they'll review together only, so that's fine. But if I remember correctly, or HBS is usually one of the first deadlines. So the season so to say starts with HBS, and then it's almost as if you really look at it, among the top 7-8 schools is every weekend or every 7 days there's a deadline of some of the other schools. So it's almost like a whole season of submitting.
Got it.
So you ideally should try to get all of your different applications prepared before, because not like HBS ka submit kiya and then in 7 days you prepare the next school ka essays. That most likely will not happen. So but it's usually kicks off with HBS as the first deadline.
And when you're writing your letter of recommendations, like you reach, I mean, I'm sure like you reach out to your ex-bosses and they'll write the LORs for you. So how do you approach this scenario? Is there any specific way of getting like from the most higher seniority person? Does that help? Or the person whom you have worked with, if he writes something very good about you and an example, is that preferred? Like how would you deal with this?
So my point of view would be that the latter is more important. I think what schools value is sort of the recommender should have a very good amount of time spent with you to sort of be in a position of authority to write what sort of your strengths are, your weaknesses are, instances where you would have shown exceptional leadership, weak leadership, what you would have learned from, etc. But that being said, their position is also like in like a slightly lower but definitely a significant factor. I think there is an edge for having these the profiles of these recommenders be ideally alums of these particular colleges, right? That's like the gold standard. But if not, premier institutions, premier backgrounds, really sort of leading in some field or the other. But both of them are important, but I just place a slight edge to the closeness that actually exists between you and your recommender.
Where did you guys take your LORs from?
So I had worked with two partners really closely, and they've become
At
like
BCG.
my mentors at BCG for like many years. I'd worked with them on like across multiple engagements as well, and often there wouldn't be a layer between us. There wouldn't be a manager between us, and like I was sort of the person executing their will, right? So because of that closeness that existed, I felt that they'd be in a good position to talk about what I had done, and because of the longevity of my time spent directly working on engagements with them, that was also like a reason why I felt those two would be like really in good positions. But at the same time, I was also cognizant that hey, them being partners in BCG would also help my case, right? I mean, nothing else. Yeah.
And for you, like, who did you take LORs?
Yeah, so there are two LORs usually. So I tried to balance the same thing. So one who is like from good institution is a partner. So I got one from partner at Blackstone, who I'd worked very closely with. So he had good things to say about me. And then second one, I tried to balance with a person who I'd written more about in the essay. So I'd written about one portfolio company that I'd worked with during my Blackstone time. So I went to the CEO of that portfolio company to write an essay, write the LOR for me.
Got it.
So I tried to balance the two things and also tried to tie it to the essay and what I had written in the essay.
Got it. No, very interesting.
I just want to have a quick shout out to the non-traditional role people or like non-traditional career people like because there might be people who are startup founders or ex-startup founders considering this as well, and that usually, and because I had to get in touch with admissions department to ask them this question, that how do they, because what do they view in this for us as like who's my boss, right? So what I did was, and I think that just a recommendation for startup founders is because your co-founder technically would not work because he's not so much, he or she may not be your manager above you, and then there's vested interests and conflict of interest kind of stuff. So in my case, I did was I got a board member who's an investor, because that's the closest you can have to someone who can actually fire you, or who reviews your work. So we had one of our lead investors from a VC firm, partner of a VC firm, who was on my board, and so I think that was a good win. So that was that, and because I couldn't find a close second or whatever, I had to go back to my my Deloitte days and actually get someone from like way back in my career. But I had to explicitly, because that was in my entire application process, that was my only confusion state for me. And so the school said, you know what, in your case, fine, we'd be fine with you getting a previous manager in a traditional role kind of thing, and that they accepted it, and that worked out okay.
Got it. Perfect. So the LORs are done, and now in the application, is there anything else that is remaining to be covered? I think that's it, right? Essays, LORs, and now so now application is done. So round 1 September mein deadline hoga on an average. Yeah. Then if people miss this, so round 2 and round 3 is usually there.
Yes.
So till when will be the round 2 and round 3 usually? Till how many, like for the next?
So I think round 1 September, you get the decision by December. Round 2 starts, I think, Jan end or first week of February. That's when that season starts. Yeah. You'll know by March, end of March. And then third round sometimes happens for some schools, it happens for some it doesn't. That I think starts in April.
Yeah. And internationals are usually dissuaded from round 3 applications only because it's going to really squeeze your visa process like a lot, because once you get the acceptance of time you have to go to school, there's a bunch of stuff you have to do. So and also the way the numbers and stack up, it's not recommended for round 3 from India.
But the fees are same irrespective of which round you're in. There's no concept of early bird, late registration and all of that.
No.
Got it.
There's only one unique thing among the top schools, at least Columbia has a Jan intake. They have a J term, which is, most of these programs are proper 2-year programs. Columbia has a 2-year program and an 18-month program. So that's the only difference, where they have a version in which you apply. There's one program at Columbia that follows a different time, and everyone else follows this time.
Got it. Cool. So now I get my decision in December. Let's say I get accepted. So now then there is an interview, which happens. So this
No, this happens before. So you get the interview call by October. So
you submit. You press the submit button. You press $1,000 or something for applying for each school or something of that sort. Also, by the way,
no, it's not 1,000. It was 250, right?
Oh, yeah, 1,000 is acceptance ka money. I forgot. Yeah, it's $250. Yeah, $250.
Probably for applying.
So you apply. So uska bhi charge lagta hai.
That also I think you can get some waiver of if you are from difficult backgrounds.
So you apply, you press the submit button, done. Now you're like chill. But yeah, like he said, so in the next couple of if in August you've done or September you've done this, by October you'll hear from the school one of two things, that either you've got the admissions interview, or you've not. Right? Like they also tell you if you're not, so then you're out of the running already. You know that for sure.
I think some schools do, some don't. Saying Stanford is on a rolling basis, so you don't know till the time the entire process is ended.
Basically. Yeah.
And HBS has some date by when they will give out all the people who have gotten shortlisted for the interviews.
Okay.
Got it.
So then you get that, you get that you have an interview, and then you have to go about of course, then each school runs the interview process differently. But you have to do it.
Got it. So all three of you have given interviews, and everyone has to give an interview before getting into the B school.
Correct. And multiple schools. So if you've applied and you got interviewed calls in, you got interview across them.
Fair. So let's discuss about the interview conversations as well. So how are these interviews usually? What do they ask? What did you guys answer in these interviews?
I'll start with Wharton. It's a bit of a non-traditional one. We do a team-based discussion, right? So it's basically the equivalent of a group discussion that Indian students may be familiar with. So it's like a 30 to 35 minute conversation that you would be expected to have, of which 20 to 25 minutes is a is a group discussion with a team of 5 to 6 other people who are also applying to Wharton, right? So very similar profile, who would essentially be either your future classmates or people you're competing with. So you'd be essentially given a prompt which is announced usually like a month or two in advance. So you know exactly what's going to be asked. So you have the luxury of time to do the right research, to bring the right perspectives. Like in my year, for example, the prompt was, hey, design a global immersion program. So earlier I'd mentioned that Wharton does these international programs, and what is the best way to design one was like the question, right? And the goal of this team-based discussion is not to say, hey, I've done the research, I feel this is the perfect country, my answer is correct. If that is not the goal. In fact, that will sort of give you negative marks. The goal of this particular interview is to prove that you can harmoniously work with a team that you've not met before. So the goal of this is sort of to say, okay, everyone's broad perspectives, right? In Wharton's interview, the first 5 minutes, each person gets a 1-minute pitch, right? So in my case, I would say, hey, I think we should go to Singapore. I feel it's relevant for ABC reasons. Here are the people that we can meet. Here is the kind of companies that we can sort of, get involved with. And here is a couple of cultural things that we can sort of immerse ourselves in. And everyone will sort of share a similar sort of rationale. And then it's an open forum, right? It's not moderated at all. Like the admissions person, which can either be an admissions officer or a second year student who's an admission fellow, I think similar to your role in Stanford, they will just sort of set the ball rolling, and then they'll just switch off their video, and then it's like it was virtual, so it was like the equivalent of a closed room, and it's completely there. If the whole team is able to work harmoniously and get to a consensus and sort of deliver a very coherent pitch, then most people in that group will largely get in, right? Even if like someone had done, let's say, 60% of the speaking, but someone had done 10% of the speaking, but had great ideas and sort of helped move the whole team around, that is viewed as a success. There may also be situations where the whole team did not gel as appropriately, but they were able to achieve that outcome of, hey, here is the final answer. Then maybe 2 or 3 people from that group may go ahead, right? Because their sort of qualities exhibited were not sort of perfect. But then there may also be groups where you won't be able to, let's say, get to an answer because the group is just not gelling at all. It's completely hostile, not really cooperative. Then it's very likely that even if there is an extremely stellar candidate, the whole group is rejected, right? So the name of the game is just working well with others. So after that sort of group discussion is over, then you enter a 10-minute conversation one-on-one with the admissions officer, where they probably are going to ask you just one question: why do you want to do an MBA, and why is Wharton that college, right? That conversation is open-ended, can take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. So that was
This would be similar to what you wrote in your essay answer.
Yeah, it'll be
also
similar, but then much more personal, much more detailed. It's much more about convictions and objectives and all of that. So similar to what you were saying, right? It's a mix of fact checking, but also sort of understanding convictions a lot better.
Got it. Pretty interesting. Similar to both of you as well at Harvard?
No. I think Wharton has a very different process, and I think each
each
college
school
has a very different process. Yeah, Harvard's interview is 30 minutes, and it's sort of like a rapid fire interview. So basically you get asked almost 25 questions in 30 minutes. So you have to quickly answer all of those questions. 2 parts to it. So first 15 minutes typically is a mock case, which is how the classes are conducted in HBS. So you have to talk about one particular topic that you have worked on. And then the interviewer keeps asking multiple follow-up questions on that. So for me, the first question was, just tell me about what have you worked on recently. That's where we started. I talked about some IPO preparation that we're doing for a portfolio company, and then the interview had multiple questions on why is the company doing an IPO, how will it help it, what are the processes. So basically to understand, can you speak about what you're doing, can you participate in class discussions, can you contribute something extra to the class. So that is first 15 minutes. Second 15 minutes is the thing that we are talking about, that they then start fact checking what you actually written in the essay. So whatever you have written in the essay, they will ask second level questions on it. What happened? Who were you working with? What did you actually work on when all of these things happened? So for me, it was in my essay I had written whatever I worked on at Blackstone with the portfolio company. Then they talked about the non-profit grant which I had raised. Then eventually I had also mentioned my extracurricular activities. So they talked about singing, dancing. How will you use that in HBS? So it was a very far. The last 10 minutes or so can go anywhere depending on where you want to take it. But again, it's more about checking what you have written, making sure that you're not just like inventing things out of thin air, and giving it credibility. As I was saying, I think by interview time, HBS interviewers, selectors have made up their mind that you are the good candidate, you can fit in class. They are just doing a second check that you will do good or no. And the conversion rate after the interview is almost 50%.
Okay.
So if there like 2,000 people who have gotten shortlisted for interview, 1,000 will make it to the class.
Okay, got it. So in Harvard, it's like 1,000 people in one batch.
One batch is 1,000.
Stanford, it's 400 you mentioned.
400.
And what is it in Wharton?
Around 850.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Fair. So your interview is done like, so 25 to 30 minutes, only
25
one
to
interview.
30 minutes. Post that, you have to do a post-interview reflection within 24 hours, which is a one-page essay of what was asked, what were the reflections from that interview. So you send that within 24 hours, and that's it.
So who takes this interview?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
The different admission consultants. So for me, it was a lady called Eileen.
But from the team?
From the Harvard team, yes.
HBS.
This is admissions Harvard team. This is different from, I think, Stanford.
Correct.
But Harvard has a very set recruiters.
Okay.
For India, for a very long time, there was just one single person who used to come every year. But during our time, it was COVID, so things changed. So, and earlier, everything used to be in person. I don't know if it's still now back in person, but for us, it was all on VC.
Got it.
Yeah,
Fair.
there was 1 or 2 people who are dedicated towards India. So you can also talk to seniors and understand what kind of questions they ask, what are they looking for.
Some schools also send in their alums to conduct interviews.
Yeah. Stanford.
That's
right?
Stanford.
Okay.
Yeah. So Stanford interviews are, it's only alum driven. It is alums who are 5 years out of the school and who want, like, you can sign up to then be a part of the admissions process. Same thing. It's for every open seat, there are two interviews that, in sense, like there's 2:1 ratio basically. They'll interview 2 people for 1 open seat kind of stuff. So 50% will get in after the interview. So you're really down to that, your probabilities at the interview stage. It's an hour-long, very conversational style. Usually they'll try to match you with someone from your industry. So you get the name, you get the info about them beforehand, like a couple of days, because you got to then get in touch with them on your own to set up a time that works for both of you all. And if there's any conflict, so in my case there was actually a conflict. The first person that they put in was a partner in another VC firm who had passed on our Series A, and so I said, this is like, I know how that's gonna go. So can't reject me twice now in my life. So anyway, and then so yeah, they matched with someone else. Very conversational style. It's an alum. What I think at Stanford, what they were really looking out for was cultural fit, because these people 5 years out, they know what the school's like, and they're trying to then find people who fit with that school spirit or the school culture. I remember distinctly my first question. This person straight up asked me and behavioral, which is like, tell me a time when .. which was all like reflective back on your, like, tell me a time when whatever, because they're going to really set the stage where you're going to answer. Okay, this is an example of that, and then the rest of the interview they're just going to deep dive into more facets of that same piece that you only set it up. So I was shocking because I prepared a lot for this interview, and then in my case the question was, tell me a time when you went beyond. And then that's it. She stopped there. I'm like, wait, is there more to, no, that's it. I'm like, what is it? Do you mean personally? Do you mean professionally? She's like, no, that's it. So and then you have to give me a minute, let me pen some thoughts down, and then you just go from there. And I try to come up with something from my past that speaks to that. And then this person just asks more and more questions to that as well. And then at the end you get some time to ask them, which you should take that time to ask them some questions. But that's basically it's very conversational style. You don't know how it's going to be. I was very again Zoom based, and I was very they didn't have much facial reactions on her, and so I didn't know what to get out of that. You don't know what you're going to get at the end of that.
Yeah, they are very good at keeping a poker face. I don't know about alums, but the admission consultants, they do it day in, day out.
Yeah, professional, right?
Yeah, they just don't give anything away from their face.
Okay.
Like, are you doing good? Are you doing bad? Nothing.
Yeah, very nerve-wracking.
Got it.
But yeah, that's how it went.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. And
Yeah, but I've heard, I think some schools have very weird interviews.
Yeah.
I think
Like-
Columbia, Wharton has second-year students taking the interviews.
Second-year
Not Wharton.
students.
It's
Wharton also has admissions fellows, right? So I was
It's
saying
second-year students
yeah.
basically taking the
So
interviews.
it's a
right?
mix of some. It can be people from the admissions office,
Okay.
or it can be final years in the Wharton program who are just about to pass out. So they undergo training. They become what is called an admissions fellow.
Hmm.
They sort of get coached by the admissions office as to how to behave, what to expect, what to look for, and then they are the ones who are essentially running it. That's because besides the 5 to 10 minutes that they actually talk to you one-on-one, the 30 minutes they're just facilitating like a group discussion. They just have to just say, hey guys, here is what you're going to talk about. You all have 1 minute each. Now go. And then their role is done for that overall thing. And then they're just making notes and just observing behaviors and what.
Right.
One key thing, by the way, I don't know what about your schools, but one thing is that at least the Stanford people, they don't get anything from your application material other than your resume. Or you are supposed to in fact send them your resume ahead of time, but that's all that they're going on. They don't know, okay, what did you write? Apne essay mein kya likha tha? Nothing. So those two, at least in our case, in Stanford's case. No,
I think that was similar for Wharton as well.
No, I think for us, they get everything.
Oh, they get
that we have
everything.
submitted.
Yeah, because I think it's admissions
Correct.
team, so
correct.
they'll have to.
So why,
Yeah,
that matters, right? It makes a difference on how you're going to show up at that interview, because you know what you can contextually think that what does this person know about you or doesn't know about you.
Right, fair. And what about the scholarship part? So how many people usually get? What kind of scholarships are there, and on what basis people can get scholarships?
At Harvard, there's a means-based scholarship program. So basically, it's only based on your financial need. So if you are coming from a weaker financial background, then you will qualify for that aid.
Okay.
It doesn't. It has no connection with your merits or your scores or anything. It's only based on your means, because they think that whoever is now made to Harvard is on the same pedestal. So now they want to balance each other out. They don't want to miss out on anyone if they don't have enough resources to actually come to Harvard. So it's supposed to be with the admission process is supposed to be needs blind. So you don't actually look at how well off the person is and will they be able to actually afford the MBA. But once they make it, then they help only the students who actually have a need to come.
Got it.
Yeah. It's similar for Wharton. It's largely need based, but with the exception of 1 or 2 grants being given for exceptional, let's say, contributions to society that go beyond your work and professional things. So, but that's like literally 1 or 2 people in a batch of 800, right? So it's largely need based. In the application form that you fill, they ask you questions about your income, when you started, when you exited, and all of that, to sort of form an opinion of okay, here is what the person has earned. To sort of inform, okay, what is your family background like, right? So that sort of goes into it. They also have a second form for like financial assistance, where you give a little bit more details beyond just the application to then inform, does this person qualify for need based? And even then it's sort of variable. Like the kind of grants that people get is sort of like, it can follow a spectrum. Some people get, can get 100% of the tuition waived off, can be 50, can be 25, it depends.
Got it. Perfect.
Same at Stanford, need-based. The only, in our case, at the time of application, there's very little to no financial information that goes in. But once you've been admitted, so round 1 by December, if you get the acceptance letter, and I think if you so ours is not like you get the acceptance then with the scholarship, with it or not with it. I don't know about y'all. So is the acceptance different from financial aid, or do you get both in the same?
No, for us it's very different.
Okay.
It was very different.
Different timelines for different
timelines.
Same. You get in, then separately you can apply for financial aid, and it's for need based as well. And then there's 2 formats. One is before the school and one after school. So one is before the school, which is depends on your status preschool. And most Indians that I know in my class got a 50% scholarship, because even if you're earning decently good salary here, when you convert to dollar terms, it's like sometimes less than minimum wage of California or like the US.
Oh my God, is it?
So mostly you should be able to get 50% scholarship. That's fine before school. And then there's a thing that post school, if your salary is less than the class average or something like that, so then they if you have to take a loan for the balance piece, they'll pay off. They take care of your loan as well afterwards.
Got it.
And so financing at least doesn't usually land up becoming a problem. Even if otherwise, then you have very low interest debt.
Right.
Actually, now with fair debt. Well,
Cool, perfect. So I think scholarship, so 50% at Stanford, and so the same percentage would be there for need-based people in Harvard and Wharton as well.
Yeah, it can go from 0 to 100% of tuition.
Got it. Depending on
some
the
people I
profile
know
and
got 100% of the tuition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My God, that's very. I don't know. Very interesting as well. So let's talk about now scholarship is done. So now you get so your acceptance is also done here. What are the typical acceptance rates percentage wise? Like how many people? So you said 10,000 people apply at Stanford, 400 people get in, right?
Yeah, it is. We're probably the only school one lower. This is these are 2 hardest programs.
Okay.
Changes year by year, but it's like 3-4% types.
Yeah,
right?
Stanford I think is the lowest
Is the
selection
lowest
rate
selection.
because it has a small class size.
Very small
Got it.
class. Yeah.
And Harvard and Wharton?
So Harvard has 1,000 batch size and like 11,000, 12,000.
Got it. So
students
around
applies.
8-9%.
Yeah, 10% or so.
10%. Got it.
I
And
think it's
same for
similar for Wharton. I think similar number of people apply, but I think it's 800 to 850 people
Got it.
who will find it.
Got it.
What
What are
also
you?
what people say is I think there's a lot of self-selection which also happens. So it's not just people who apply. That is the base. The base is also people who just decide that they won't get into HBS, so they don't even apply. So the 10% looks slightly inflated because not all of the people who want to do an MBA actually apply to Harvard.
Okay. Got it. Fair. Makes sense. What are the fees of your each of your colleges? You mentioned $250K for Stanford, which is 2.4 crores.
Correct. 2 years. Ka.
2 years ka. What is the number for you guys?
Yes, similar. I think 120K including tuition, staying, food, travel, like minimum travel
120K for 1 year.
for 1 year. So
Okay.
240K for 2
Similar
years.
then, okay.
And then like as you're saying, like you can spend as much as you
Yeah,
want.
of
can
course.
travel
If
to
you guys want to share that, I'm open
Antarctica.
to hearing those numbers also. But yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint. Also 240K. 240K with a minimum-ish
Got it.
travel and all of that. I think
Yeah.
I went for like 2 treks like in my first semester, and I think budget-wise I'm still tracking towards that 240 number. So I think largely,
Got it.
yeah.
Perfect. And Ismail, like one quick question here. So work experience on an average, like how many years of work experience is needed before getting into all these colleges? Is it like, I've heard it is 4 to 5 years on an average.
Yeah.
But what would be your
Correct. Average age
Average.
was 27.
Okay.
Yeah, 27, 28.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
4 or 5 years of work ex is
How
the
old are you
average.
guys, by the way? All three of you.
I'm 28.
Now.
28. Now, yeah.
33.
Okay.
34.
Got it.
26.
Amazing. You're the youngest here. So average work experience 4 to 5 years. And one question. So let's say for someone like me who has a 2 years corporate experience at company like Aditya Birla Group, and after that I've done my own thing. So these things like content creation, or let's say I'm running my own education startup. So these would also get counted as work experience when I
of course.
apply.
Of course.
Got it. Fair. And so it's not mandatory to have like a corporate experience is what I'm trying to ask.
No.
Got it. And out of these,
I don't think you had just had Deloitte
Yeah.
experience,
Just only
right? So
Deloitte,
you're
yeah.
just doing your
yeah, but his
startup.
startup was damn successful.
No,
so
no, but- no, but
CA
the-
and all, I mean.
No, but you're right. But you know, the best way for people to understand, and there's a lot of literature written on traditional backgrounds and non-traditional backgrounds.
Yeah.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Which is there are, and think of it this way: that they're trying to construct a good mix of a class, and it's good that way. They'll try to mix in a good amount of people from PE, VC. IB, it's like they'll try to create, and then some people who are not from the traditional backgrounds as well, which I guess like people like us would fall into. So there will be in most of these class constructions. That's more important to think about. I mean, not that you will influence who else is applying, but yeah, there are enough, like they leave room for enough people from diverse backgrounds to come in. Otherwise, they can just fill it up with all PE or all VC or whatever. But they don't do that. They keep enough mix for all different backgrounds.
So what is the usual mix in a batch of, let's say, 400 for you or 1,000 or 850? So how many people would be from PE, VC, engineering, military, like percentage-wise? Like which would be the most preferred kind of a career?
I think for Harvard, I don't have exact numbers. I think biggest cohort would be from consulting background.
Okay.
I think those are the biggest.
Which is like the BCG, McKinsey, Bain.
BCG, MBB, and then other consulting as well.
Same.
And in terms of, I think, nationality, so 60% of class is US, 40% is outside the US, so international students. Overall, then, biggest is consulting. Then I would say there would be military folks. There would be engineering, I think, is still small. Maybe a lot of people don't even apply. That's probably why.
Got it.
But then there's PE, VC, IB is a good mix, sizable mix. And then there are some people from totally non-traditional backgrounds, so entrepreneurship or like music.
How much would that
entertainment,
percentage be?
sports.
Any idea?
Which one?
The entrepreneurship and non-traditional.
I think they're trying to increase it because Harvard historically not been known for entrepreneurship as much as Stanford has been or Wharton has been. Right now, it'd probably be 15-ish%. So,
Got it.
Yeah.
Fair.
Class.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. So now, okay, so we've been accepted. Now, let's say now I get into these, like one of these schools. So I start in August 2025.
Yeah.
So once the interview is done, I get to know whether I'm accepted or rejected. And then I'm free for the next, like free as in I'll be working on my own thing for the next 6 to 8 months, that time horizon.
Yeah.
And then I get into the school in August 2025. So the question to the two of you specifically, since you both have completed your MBA, Okay. So 2 years journey, if you were to summarize it in the next 3 minutes or 5 minutes, I know it's a tough one, but how would that entire journey be of 2 years?
It's a very tough question.
I'm just curious. When you say summarize, you mean like...
Summarize, I mean, like, what exactly, how was your entire experience in the sense, like, okay, August 2025 mein you start. So what happens next? Then, like, when are the exams, semester exams?
Okay.
Then
Oh, that.
what,
Okay.
like, the next 2
That's
years?
literally
Like,
straightforward.
what happens? Yeah. I mean,
Not like hot
do-
takes. Yeah.
No. I mean, I'm not asking where you went for partying, how many girls you dated when you were doing your MBA and all. Again, unless you want to specifically answer
How
them.
much beer pong? Yeah.
No, maybe I can take this. Looks
Yeah.
like an easy one. No, so after you get admitted, I think some people decide to do a pre-MBA internship. So they try out different fields which they wanted to try out anyway after MBA. So they do like 3-4 months of internship before going to HBS, before going to any business school to form their view of that industry.
You really love HBS a lot, no?
I think it would be clear from the start
Yeah.
of the interview itself. But yeah, so once you get there, then they have an initial... I can talk about HBS more and then probably you can supplement it for Stanford. But they have an initial first week of grooming you into what you should expect from the next 2 years, what you should start thinking about, what you want to spend time on, and they introduce you to different clubs which are there, different things that the school has to offer. And then the first semester starts. Usually the semester goes on. There are some midterm exams in the first semester which happen around October end or so.
What kind of content and subjects are usually taught?
So Harvard has a very fixed curriculum for the first year. Like all 1,000 students have to follow the same curriculum for the entire year. The subjects that get covered in the first year are finance, two courses of finance, one course on marketing, one course on leadership, one course on like operations management, one course on entrepreneurship, venture capital, venture investing. So like a very broad picture, that to give a very broad picture of how businesses run. And a very comprehensive picture of comprehensive and understanding of how businesses run. So that happens in the first year. Then you have your semester end exams of the first semester by December, and then you get a 1.5 month break till the second semester start, which starts around January end or so.
What are usually the college timings?
First year, it's typically fixed for Harvard. I think different for different schools. Harvard starts at around 9 o'clock in the morning, has 2 to 3 classes in a day, which end by around 3:30 p.m. or so. And that's the class duration. But Harvard has this different way of conducting classes in which it's a case-based method in which you are given a case before the class, on which you have to read through the case before coming to the class, and then the entire class is just a discussion about that case. So then the remaining part of your day goes into preparing for cases for the next day. So from 3:30 p.m. to however time it takes, you're reading the case for the next day, and typically you have 3 cases a day, and each case takes around 1.5 hours to prepare. So you are spending almost 5 hours of the remaining time preparing for the next day.
Got it.
And then in evenings you can have some networking sessions, you can have parties, you can have other things too.
And it's Monday to Friday, the classes? Which are
Yeah, Monday to Friday.
Got it.
Some days are 2 classes, some days are 3 classes, depends on your course. And so that is the first year, which ends around April or May of the next year.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll take this example.
Yeah.
So 2026 में ये खत्म हो जाएगा. The
Yeah.
first year.
Correct.
Okay.
So 2026 mein that ends, and then you have your internship, which we have talked about. You can spend time on doing different things that you want to explore. You can spend time on the industry that you really want to get in during those 2-3
So
months.
these internships in US itself.
Depends. I think people come back to India,
Okay.
or they go to different countries.
You guys did some internships?
I did internship in the US. So
Where?
I worked in a long-short equities hedge fund in New York called Atika Capital. I wanted to explore the public side of investing because I hadn't done that. I had just done private equity for a very long time.
You also did internship where?
I was in the US as well, in Miami. At a venture studio.
Okay.
Trying to build
What is a venture studio?
It's like a one stage before a VC, which is where they try to build startups in-house.
Like an accelerator or an incubator?
Incubator, yeah, basically. Yeah.
Got it. Fair. What is the average stipend which people can expect in these internships?
Very different. It, like varies a lot. You can do free internships as well, which people usually don't want. But if you want to enter the space and you don't have any credits to back it, then you might just do it for free to get it on your resume or to learn about a particular space. Or if you're in finance, I think it can range. I don't even remember now, but it's not like very huge. It's basic. Because it's just an internship at the end of the day.
Got it. So usually at IIMs and all, they get like on 2 lakhs a month, rupees 2 lakhs a month kind of a stipend during internship. I was just trying to compare it with that.
Yeah, I think it would be in the same range. I don't think it would be very different. Yeah.
Like even your internships where you worked at.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm trying to recollect, but skipping my mind.
Got
but
it.
It'll be in the same range.
Got it.
Not very
Cool.
different.
All right.
Yeah.
So summer internship is over. Then the second year starts.
Then the second year starts, which is similar in the timings and all to first years a little bit. But the second year in Harvard is different in the curriculum because in second year you choose the courses that you want to do. So there's a full 2-month program of deciding what courses you want to pick. You go to different road shows of professors and courses that they're taking. You try to understand what you want to learn in the next year. And then you pick courses. You can form your own schedule based on when the courses are. And that happens in the second year. So for example, I focused more on learning everything about businesses apart from finance because I had done finance for a long time. So I picked courses on marketing, I picked courses on entrepreneurship, I picked courses on negotiations, on leadership, which are totally different from what I'd done before.
Can you give an example in a course of negotiation or leadership? What do they exactly teach and how is it very different from a very traditional education system?
Yeah. I mean, just the Harvard method of teaching is very different from Indian education system because of the case method that we talked about. Because the entire class is a discussion, so you are encouraged to discuss. 50% of the class marks are just based on the points that you're making in the class. So you are encouraged to speak up a lot. The teacher who is in the class, they are just a conductor of the class. They don't add any points. In the end, they might conclude some takeaways from the entire discussion, but in during the 1.5 hours of the class, they are just conducting. They're asking different people different questions. So in a course like negotiation, it's very interesting because in negotiations, it is a practical skill to learn, right? Negotiation can't be taught theoretically. So we have mock negotiation practices in every class, and the next class is just a summary of that negotiation. So you become a particular person. So let's say you are CEO of a startup and you have to negotiate how much a VC is going to invest in you. So one person is assigned the role of a VC, one person is assigned the role of the startup, and then you have mock negotiations, then you have group negotiations, and then you compare how other groups have performed versus your group in the next class. Then you have some takeaways. You understand the different strategies that other teams have used versus what you used, what you can improve, and then there's some takeaways from that. There's some guiding principles that the professor provides, but otherwise it's, I think, more hands-on, more practical than what I had ever experienced before in the Indian education system.
Got it. Perfect. So then the second year you choose courses and all, and then again exam. The last exam.
Yeah, last month, like again, November end or December is the exam period. Exams are typically written, fully subjective, case-based exams. So you're given a case, you have to write whatever questions are asked on that. You have to give your thesis on that particular case. That is the exam.
Got it.
Or sometimes you have papers as well. So you can choose the topic that you want to work on, and you can create a 8-10 pager paper that you can submit on that particular topic.
Got it. Fair. Similar for Stanford, like the teaching experience and.
No, quite different. Well, similar in terms of like the HBS is famous for its cases, and a lot of other schools, by the way, teach. Because HBS was a case center.
Yeah.
They're the ones who pioneered the case method, and so some of the cases are taught in some of the classes. Stanford follows. I'll just try to quickly do the 3-minute run through of how the year looks like. Same thing. First week in so West Coast schools, so California schools versus East Coast schools. So we start a month later. So summer runs on till mid-September, end of September. School starts for us end of September. Stanford follows Stanford at the university level, so not just the business school, but all. And so Stanford's an integrated campus. It's the largest campus in the US, and so it's literally.
Oh, is it? No.
It's a town on its own.
How many acres? Any idea?
It's massive, dude. I don't even I think it's from there till the ocean. So it's just.
It has multiple schools within itself.
Yeah,
right?
because
it has like engineering, it has arts, it has business school, it has different multiple.
In fact, so Stanford's actually more known for CS and that kind of stuff, right? They're like it's
right.
middle of Silicon Valley and all that sort of stuff. So it like anyway. So
Where are these schools, by the way?
actually,
Stanford
so
is in?
it's basically just San Francisco. It's in Palo Alto, but basically it's like it's in California, which is between San Francisco and LA, and it's mostly close to San Francisco.
Got it.
45 minutes from San Francisco.
Got it. Howard
Howard is in Boston and has a full Howard undergrad campus, but Howard Business School has its own different campus, which is I think different from the other schools. I think
Correct.
most of the other business schools have one building in the entire university. Howard Business School has its own separate campus from Howard, which is across the Charles River in Boston. So very scenic, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, I've seen on your Instagram. And
So Wharton is in Philadelphia. It's part of the broader University of Pennsylvania, UPenn. It has like a few buildings spread across the UPenn campus, but Wharton also has a San Francisco campus. So it also offers a semester in San Francisco for people who really want to double down and working in tech and working
So
with
for
like,
MBA students only?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they can go to San Francisco campus
Correct.
also, like
Yes.
during their 2-year tenure?
during their 2 years. So one semester of
It's
the
like
4
an exchange
semesters.
program kind of a thing, is it?
Yeah, but
Like
within so
within
it's like
the
an
campus.
official.
Yeah,
It's a Wharton campus itself, right? It's
Right,
not like
right.
Wharton's working with another campus. Wharton's built its own campus in San
Got it.
Francisco. So
Fair.
the
Yeah.
core is in Philadelphia, but there's also the SF campus that we
Yeah,
got.
right next to Google, in
Yeah.
fact. Yeah, pretty
Oh
cool.
wow,
Yeah,
nice.
pretty
Yeah, sorry,
fun.
go ahead. Yeah.
So, Stanford integrated campus, and that's a big deal. So Stanford, one of the big draws is that you can at the business school as well, or you can earn credits. So it's a all credit system, by the way. All classes have credits, and you have to just do a minimum
What
threshold.
do you mean by that?
So same thing, right? You gotta do. They have thresholds on like you gotta do minimum these many credits, maximum these many credits, and then there's a big option pool
These
to.
credits are basically attendance.
No. Credit in terms of like each class carries different weightage of credits. There are more intense classes that could be like again, and they have different. I don't know about the other schools, but the more intense classes could be 4 credits kind of classes, and then they have your cute little like 1 credit classes which are like seminar style, just sit in and write a paper at the end kind of stuff. So there's a wide variability. You just gotta. Your entire MBA program, you got to cross a certain number of credits for you to get the degree in those 2 years, right? And you can structure it however you want. You can do some heavier, some quarters of heavier credit load and some lesser. So you can. There's a lot of variability there, similar to Harvard. But well, our case, our first quarter is locked in, so we follow the quarter system. So 3 months only. So we have basically. First year is 9 months of 3 quarters. Same thing. Second year, so you're really doing 6 quarters worth in 2 years. Only the first quarter is locked in because they get everyone up to speed. Stanford follows this thing where they do a non-disclosure, so academic non-disclosure. I think we all
Wharton
have,
also
right? Like, yeah.
What does that mean?
That's the best thing, for especially Indian students.
Yes.
What?
Do you want to explain it?
So basically, the school is not required to disclose your grades to any external party.
Okay.
And this is something that students opt into, right? So like the college is not going to stop someone from, let's say, putting their grade on their CV if they so choose to. But Wharton as a school policy and others as a school policy will not put it. And so this has its advantages, of course, right?
So
because like people...
I think the reason here is because they are saying that everyone is equal because they've come into Harvard, Stanford or Wharton.
And it's also
that
because people don't want... so if you have, let's say, a focus on GPA in your CV, then people by default become anchored towards spending a majority of their time in the classrooms to get those grades. You remove that, you're essentially encouraging people to try out a lot of new things and not just be constrained by the classroom.
So,
Like, do you guys have a cumulative grade percentage, like a CGPA kind of
We,
thing?
I know mine,
I know mine.
but that's it.
Wow, we don't even have that concept.
yeah.
We just get
Oh, okay.
grades for each subject.
Huh.
We don't get a cumulative grade overall for the entire 2 years.
Yeah. No. We.
Okay.
How will you? Your Baker scholar gets decided on basis
So
of.
that is only the school knows.
Huh.
So only the school knows who are the top 10%
Okay.
people. They get the Baker Scholar, but none of these students actually know where they stand.
what do they get? Sorry, what is that called?
So there's a award called Baker Scholar, which is given to the top 10% academic students of.
So only they get
HBS.
to know.
They also don't know actually.
You
what
just know
exact
whether you're a
grade-
Baker
that-
scholar or
yeah.
not a Baker scholar. So were you in the top 10 percentile of your class ranking? That's it.
all you know.
No, but I'm trying to ask, like, you don't know the grades of your batchmates also.
No.
I don't know an overall grade for me. I know what grade I've gotten in each subject, but I've taken 20 subjects over the 2 years, right? So I don't know what is the cumulative
No,
grade.
I meant to ask other people, like they don't have that list. Engineering में नहीं है, पूरा 1, 2, 3, 4 ranking का list.
No.
So that is not
That's the
given.
thing.
Okay.
The point is that all of these schools, they highly encourage academic risk taking basically, which is that otherwise if it was just that, then and like he said, so if McKinsey was just coming in to recruit on basis of GPA, then the finance guys would just take more finance classes because you would crush it. But then what's the point, right? What's the point of coming to this a place like this? And so they highly encourage academic risk taking. Anyway, so
very interesting point, by the way.
Very, especially for the Indian student, like all of us, right? Because otherwise we've been in environments in which like.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's a rat race which is going on. I have to be first and all of that. I mean, it happens everywhere. So I think that's a very valid point.
Correct. And also good, no? Iske baad what you're going to study. There's no more application on top of it. Anyway, so it's an integrated campus, which so Stanford is very, very big into leveraging interdisciplinary learning. So they, it's not a prerequisite, but it's highly encouraged, and culturally so. A lot of students across across Stanford overall take classes in each other's things. So in my case, because I was trying to break into US healthcare, because my whole point was that I was going to come and try to build a healthcare startup in the US now. So I took almost a third of my credits. So like a third of my time at the MBA program was actually spent in the medical school, because you can earn credits at the med school taking like neurobiology 101 like with undergrads. So and in fact even I guess the other universities can also do that. And so but it's one good part is one integrated campus. Everyone like. Culturally speaking, of course the business school people hang on their own, and there's a lot of like this little divide that everyone else and the business school students. But beyond that, it's quite sort of nice because everyone gets to sort of hang with each other, and then there's a lot of interdisciplinary learning. Most startups that are born at Stanford, in fact, there's a lot. The university overall goes above and beyond trying to encourage a lot of, especially mixers between CS and MBA, law, the different faculties or different departments. And
CS is computer science.
They try to do a lot of mixers together because they know that that's like where the right crucible for entrepreneurship and startup to take place. In Stanford's like really like double down on the entrepreneurship and startup thing. But follow quarter system. Everything else is pretty similar. We don't follow the case method as much. But yeah, it's
but if I were to ask all three of you, what is like something very unique about all your business schools? What would that be? Maybe any session, or what is something that you really liked a lot about your business schools?
I'll just quickly go. Stanford is clearly sort of the startup and venture capital ecosystem is massive at Stanford. Most of the building names are like some VC partner. So Stanford's really big into venture capital. And I think that my favorite thing was this class on a product market fit. Of course, actually everything's said, and I'm going to play an ode to HBS because they have the ultimate guy. They used to have the ultimate guy called Clayton Christensen, who did the disruption theory. Incredible HBS professor, and the theory that came out of HBS.
What's the name of the professor?
Clayton Christensen. Okay. He wrote the disruption theory, which is like the ultimate like end all and be all of startup. Like think about new markets. Innovator's dilemma.
I'm getting my MBA in this 2 years, 3.
It's crazy. Like just that framework is insane. But anyway, but yeah, a lot of startups is main thing at Stanford. They encourage it a lot. They help you a lot. There's a lot of funding available. So the school doubles down a lot on startups. But there's a class called product market fit, which the guy who invented the term product market fit, Andy Ratcliffe, he comes and teaches the class PMF, and so it's like.
It's amazing.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And any industry sessions, like big entrepreneurs coming? Like,
I mean, like just 2 days ago, we had the NVIDIA Jensen Huang or whatever. A campus. But yeah, I guess that's all of these schools. You have an incredible set of people just coming through. And but because Stanford's bang in the middle of Silicon Valley, we have a lot more tech oriented. We don't have as much on like how Columbia or the East Coast schools will have a high finance focus. Ours is very tech.
I heard you also have that session, 7 like every week there is like where people sit with each other and they just talk. I have heard.
So Stanford's very big into sort of so there's two things. So anyone ever applying to Stanford, there's two things. One, of course, the tech and entrepreneurship side of things. But Stanford's very, very big into EQ side of things, about like feelings and EQ, which I'm not like, it's great, by the way. So which is like the whole motto, and admissions likes that, by the way. So in admission, in application material, or especially in interviews, I do advise people who've reached the interview stage at GSB, at the business school at Stanford, that talk about Stanford loves sort of the whole notion, like for example this stuff like leadership for society. They're big into that. Their goal is to train leaders who are not just great business leaders but also emotional, like having the hard conversations at the workplace and that side of thing, because they're like, okay, the leaders of 21st century should be of that sort. So
what's that class about?
It's called touchy-feely. It's called interpersonal dynamics actually, but it's probably the most famous class at Stanford in the business school, which is just get a bunch of people to sit around in a circle for a quarter for like 6 hours once a week. But then the whole point is that you give each other instant feedback on how your impression is forming in my head, but we keep it to ourselves, right? Like in the real world, we don't say, okay, dude, by the way, like I thought that about, but this class, the whole point of stepping into this class is that give each other feedback right away, and then so you start actually getting impression of how are you landing on other people. Like in the little time we've got to know each other, you've obviously formed impressions of me, good, bad, ugly, everything, right? But I'm sure there's some like not comfortable things that you would never say to me, because why would you? Like we're not that way as society. But they're like, create a safe space where you say the hard things to each other. Like, hey dude, like I didn't like how you said that, because when you said that, it made me, there's a framework that when you did X, it made me feel Y.
So what do you guys do for those 6 hours? Like what
you're
happens?
Just sitting in a circle and you're just giving each other, and this Donald, like there's no moderation. You're just like, once you put enough, like especially like any of these school cup students in a circle together, they're opinionated people, right? And so we'll just start talking about like stuff.
About what stuff?
Anything can come up. It's usually like school related. It starts off in some direction, and then it heads off in. The point is not what is being spoken, but it's about how each of you are showing up. And like for example, if I'm goofy, but like I think I'm being cute by being goofy, but in the eyes of someone else, be like, dude, that's irritating. But he would never say that to me. But in this, the whole point is that can you create an environment in which you give instant feedback to each other all the time, and it can get very intense. But it is a life-changing class. A lot of people like talk about touchy-feely in their Stanford application, in their interviews, and a lot of literature is written online, because it can be life-changing, and it was for me. Most people end up crying at some point in time in the class.
What are you saying?
Yeah, only
Seriously?
because like you hear things about yourself. First time you're hearing feedback about yourself that no one has ever given you in life, right? Like it can be life-changing if it all goes well, and it can be a transformative class. So
God,
anyway,
crying and all, I mean, that's extreme, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. Men can cry now. But,
Yeah, of course. I mean, but I didn't know that feedback dene ke baad and all.
Because
like,
it gets very intense.
Wow.
But it's good.
Is it the same group of people that
Same,
keep meeting for the entire semester?
Same. Yeah.
Acha, same people.
Same,
Okay.
yeah.
But it changes every semester then?
No. You just do one quarter this class only once.
Acha, okay.
You're done for 3 months,
okay,
and then
okay.
you're with that crew.
Got
By the way, just quick shout out. HBS is a very big. This is not about touchy-feely. There's a section. You should have spoken about the section experience.
Yeah,
right? 'Cause
it's going to come to that. But
Yeah.
anyway.
So, sorry, before that, so you guys don't have this, what do you call it? Touchy feeling?
No, we do. Like, we try to imitate, but Stanford is a clear leader in that.
Okay.
Like, they're known for that course.
Got it.
And of course, I think they're known for the actual practitioners coming to take the class, which he was talking about initially. Because you're in that ecosystem, you don't have professors who are taking some of the classes. You actually have industry practitioners who have done those things, who come to class and take those classes.
Oh yeah, like, dude, I just have a quick shout out. Like the main venture capital class is taught by the managing partner of Anderson Horowitz, who's the live and his guest lectures are like Eric Schmidt.
Ben Horowitz.
So Eric Schmidt and Scott Kapoor co-teach the class. Eric Schmidt is the ex-CEO of Google or Alphabet, co-teach the class, and then their guests are just like Evan Spiegel, which is a Snapchat guy, or Ben Horowitz, who comes in about hard things, and just because it's like, yeah, that's casual, and you have lunch with them afterwards, and you can do whatever, and then they invite you to play golf, and the access is nuts within the tech world only. Now, if people are trying to break into private equity or hedge funds or whatever, I don't know if this school will be the best one, but venture capital, entrepreneurship, big tech are clear for the school at
Got
least.
it. Cool.
Definitely.
So what do you guys like unique about your
Yeah, for
school?
HBS, I think that one thing which is the main focus, which is what we talked about, the case method. I think that is the holy grail, and everything else is structured around that. So the class is huge. There's 1,000 people, right? So they break the class into multiple sections. So each section is around 92 people, and then you have 10 or 11 sections of those people. And then you are in that section for the entire 2 years. The first year, you're sitting in the same class with the same people each day, every day in the same location. So your class is assigned, your seat is assigned in the classroom. You know where each other person will sit, and you take all the classes together with the same group of people for the next 1 year. And then the classes are very, as I was saying, they're all discussion based, right? So you hear the perspective of a certain person, you form a view about them, and then you meet them after the class, then you get to know them better, and then you know those 90 people very well after the end of first year, because you have met everyone, you have heard their perspective on each topic that you have discussed during that 1 year. that section experience is core to your case discussion. And then there are other things, like you have a discussion group every morning in the first year, where like before the classes start at 9 a.m. you meet your discussion group of 4 or 5 people at 8 a.m. in the morning to discuss the cases that are going to be taught during that day, and then you form a very close relationship with those 4 or 5 people as well. So I formed a very good relationship with them. They came to my wedding as well. So the relationship which you form with different group of people becomes very strong. Section is the core. Then you have a discussion group. Then you have affinity communities, and then you have other clubs where you can form close relationships with. But at the end of the day, it's all surrounding and I think benefiting and it's amplifying the case method, because once you know what the other guy is going to talk about, you know what are the counterpoints that you want to place. And then you're thinking about a discussion which is going to happen in the class. You know who are the people inside the classroom, what they're going to say. And then
can you give some examples here, like what kind of discussions happen, what kind of topics are there?
It's wide range of discussions. So for example, leadership you were talking about, right? Leadership is a class where like you talk about very difficult situations. You talk about, you're given a case situation again. So you're given a person who is, let's say, black, who's a woman who has faced a lot of scrutiny during their lives, and after 4 or 5 years, let's say they are going to have a kid and they're facing some issues because there's a lot of discrimination happening against them, and then you're discussing about what would you do if you were in the shoes of that person. And then people bring in perspectives of what has actually happened with them, how they actually dealt with those situations, and then we have people crying in the classes because you're going very deep into, and you create a safe space because you're meeting the same people again and again. So you create a safe space. You are comfortable with sharing what has happened with you, even good, bad, ugly. And that is where I think you develop insights, you form close relationships, and you form relationships on whom you can call out even after 15 years, 20 years down the line. Because now by end of first year, you know those people inside out. I think that is the biggest selling point for HBS, the close relationships you form. I think there's some negative parts of it because effectively in 1,000 batch, you form relationships with those 90 people and that becomes very cliquey. So you don't spend as much time with the remaining 900 people. But the second year is to do so. So you maybe will know another 80, 90, 100 people during your second year. But your cachet effectively becomes 200, 250 of the people outside the 1,000 people who you know well, who you can reach out to in the time of need.
Got it. Very interesting. So nice. And for Wharton?
So for Wharton, and some of it will be biased because of my own experiences, but I feel like the part of the Wharton experience I really enjoy is the flexibility, right? Like, so like both of you spoke about, hey, you have this quarter-long class where it's the focus is about getting into the emotions. You have the fixed year stuff where you learn all of the different topics that are necessary for the first year, right? So Wharton has a very flexible curriculum, and literally anyone who wants to decide they want their career to go a certain way can sort of plan the entire aspect of their first semester, first year, and entire MBA experience together. For example, you have that 1 year thing. We'll have it for a semester, which is like fixed, right? We will have, let's say, 9 topics that are mandatory for MBA students to cover, right? Of which 4 are fixed and you must do in your first semester. The others, feel free to do it at any time during your MBA syllabus. Within them also, let's say if management is a topic, here are 3 options that you can choose anyone based on what is sort of your alignment, right? There can be managing emerging enterprises for someone who's more entrepreneurship oriented, or it can be managing like the established enterprise where it's someone who wants to sort of take the lead on, let's say, strategy and big transformation work and all of that. You also have a large focus on simulation. So the classes are really, there is no one size fits all approach, right? I think it's really dynamic, and whatever the professor feels is a good way for that course material to be taught is taught regardless of whatever the way is. Like there are cases that are been taught. HBS cases are obviously referenced, right? Like definitely the case library, like leading edge of what kind of cases.
There's this book, HBR at 100, that talks about all the cases of Harvard Business School, no? I think
HBS cases, it's a full on throttle industry. Like they are churning out cases every few weeks, they are the leading, as people are saying. Like their cases are taught across business schools across the globe. Even I am Ahmedabad, I think most cases are from HBS.
So cases as in like it's a case study
think about it as a 15 to 20, 25 page document on a particular company or a particular topic within what happened during particular time in that company, about a person. So whatever case the professor wants to discuss in a particular class, they create a full analysis, history of that, give you all facts and figures, so as to make you feel that you are in the shoes of that person. You have this much information. What will you do next?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to complete my point by addressing sort of three sort of topics. One is the curriculum side of things. Second is the interpersonal dynamic side of things. And third is charting the career path, which I addressed previously, right? So curriculum case is one part. There is also a huge focus on simulations, and each class will have, let's say, its own simulation. Like the first class you encounter at Wharton, it's something called the Foundations of Teamwork and Management, where you have something called a learning team, right, which is a pod of 6 people, and this is a subset of sections that is very similar for HPS. The whole class of 850-ish is divided into four clusters, each divided into further 3 cohorts. Each cohort is then divided into 5, let's say, learning teams. So it's me and 5 others, which 6 people, very similar to the interview, right? Because that is the model that they want to replicate. So we are sort of entering into a simulation. You manage an electric car company. Here are 5 different chapters that you need to navigate. You have someone else who is a CEO and all of your employees. There may be a crisis. This guy gets fired, and now one of you has to make a pitch for why you are the right person and why someone else is not, right? So they put you in a lot of uncomfortable positions and navigate both the business side of what is the right business decision to be made, and secondly, from an organizational or from a team point of view, how do you navigate the interpersonal conflicts and all of that. So simulations help capture all of that, and I think that is something I see in a lot of classes. There is also a focus on really, let's say, personal or thought-provoking, or let's say ethos-driven classes, where it's not just, hey, here's a topic, please learn, please give an exam. Like the best example is like my legal ethics class, which I can't like shut up about. Like this professor will say, guys, today we're going to talk about responsibility to customers. And here is a interesting question. Let's say if you are a fast food company, your food is killing people. Why are you marketing it so hard? And then he will pick like a person and then go on a 5-minute one-on-one conversation just to understand that person's ethos, right? If someone says, I will do it because hey, profits, right? Why do you feel that way? And then he'll keep giving nuances where people actually have to confront who they are as a person, which I feel like it goes way beyond any other academic experience for me, and that's huge, right? So that's on the curriculum. So interpersonal side, like the course that you were mentioning, UPenn has something called group dynamics, where it's very similar construct, right? You sit with a group of people, you actually explore all these uncomfortable things. And the flexibility that Wharton has as a business school is that people can easily like pick up classes from the broader University of Pennsylvania. So group dynamics is something that happens across the entire university. So there might be a small subset of business school students sitting amongst the larger university people having these uncomfortable conversations, right? So interpersonal elements is something that's sort of dispersed amongst the core classes and learning experience, but there's also like programs that you can sort of choose to double down on this. There's something called P3, which is purposes, principles, and I'm forgetting the last P, but it's very similar. You have like a book, which it's basically like a book club where you have like let's say a challenging book, and through that you discuss your feelings, you discuss what makes you, what motivates you, what is your purpose, what would you do, etc. So that's something that people can sort of do to sort of become more purposeful leaders in a way. You also have the leadership ventures and various sort of global experiences to put you in the shoes of someone who may run a business, who may be in a precarious position, like let's say climbing the Andes mountain, and someone literally can have hypothermia and collapse. The other people are responsible for that. You're essentially navigating a difficult situation. So these ventures and these challenges just help strengthen the bond between those groups of people, and also just help sort of build in those core leadership experiences and whatnot. Right. Flexibility we touched upon, and that sort of why I sort of put flexibility at the end is because all of these elements of curriculum, of case-based, of simulations, of intensive, of ventures, of the core group learning experience, etc. All of this can be interspersed into the curriculum. You can choose what percentage of each of these you want to pick. Right. Like me personally, I really value the interpersonal side of things. So I'm choosing to take less of core courses and more of, hey, I want to take negotiations. I want to take influence. I want to take this particular, program just to like understand who I am as a bit more. So while Wharton is sort of known as a finance and entrepreneurship focused school, like people have the sort of all the resources that they need to really shape their academic experience in whatever way they see fit. And they're obviously supported by, let's say, college advisors, career advisors, alums and all of that to sort of sense check, hey, is this the sort of right thing for you or not? So long monologue, but to summarize, that flexibility that Wharton offers to really help a student dictate where they want to take their careers is something that I personally find really valuable.
Right, fair. In terms of the average packages which people get at all these universities, what would be the average package? So at an investment of $240K, $250K dollars, what is the average package of the batch at each university? You mentioned Stanford is $250K itself. Yeah. What would be for
I think
Harvard?
for a long time it has been around 250K is what
Similar.
Yeah,
So
250
2.5
to 60K is
crore.
yeah. It can range from 150 to 500, 600.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So, but this is in the US is what you're
In the US.
mentioning?
In the US.
Okay, and
yeah.
do people come back to India after doing their
Yeah, I
MBA? Of
think
course, you have come,
more
but...
yeah, more and more so
Yeah, like him.
in recent
Yeah,
years.
yeah. But what is the average package which those people can expect?
Depends, right? Like some of my batchmates have gone into entrepreneurship right after HBS. So of course, like this right
Yeah.
now, there's nothing there. But if you go into finance, you can earn similar to what you would be earning in the US.
2.5 crores.
Like 250K,
Which is
yeah,
2.5
correct,
crore.
somewhere around that.
Got it.
You can start from there. Depends on the industries. Like some
Got
people have gone into tech, which might be slightly lower. Depends on what big tech or small tech which you go into. It can range. The cohort size is very small who come back to India, right? Or come back to their countries, because majority of the people stay in the US. So for example, we had 40 people who from India who were in my batch, 45 people. I think people who are back are 10 or 11. 3 or 4 had their family business, so they're back into their family business. 3 are in finance. 3 or 4 are doing entrepreneurship. 1 guy is in tech. So it's majorly either family business or finance or entrepreneurship. Family business, entrepreneurship, you can't put a price.
Yeah, of course. Got it. Fair. For Wharton, similar number.
So Wharton is going to be slightly lower because there's a huge long tail of the kind of industries people sort of apply to. So there are about 30% odd people who go into consulting, similar-ish number who go into financial services. But then the remaining sort of 40% is spread between, let's say, technology, retail, consumer goods, social impact investing and all of that. And that sort of will sort of drive the median down. I think for consulting and financial services, it's a very similar figure, right? 200 to 250K. Tech, I think the median figure for 23 was like, I think 170 to 200, somewhere in that range.
Got it.
And then I think it's like 100K plus, but 100 to 170 for like, let's say, retail, CPG and for their long tail. So I think the core app, like the complete program median was around 170K.
Got it.
But driven by all of the
Fair.
various industries that Wharton sort of prioritizes as well.
Fair. Cool. And I've heard that people who go for MBAs party a lot during weekends. How often you guys used to party and all?
A lot is the easy way to say this. But generally, you're sort of encouraged to go out and meet people that you wouldn't otherwise do. If I were to say that I just did classes and I just did like recruitment-ish events, I would probably just meet less than 10% of like college people, right? Because
did you guys find your life partners at your B-schools?
Well, I will point it to you.
I didn't find mine at Bschools, but I was lucky enough to have my lovely wife Divya with me during my HBS.
Oh, wow.
So I got married during HBS.
Okay.
And then my wife was there with me for 1.5 years, during which time she was doing her own course in Boston University.
Okay.
But I had that advantage.
Got it.
Her support during the time.
Got it. Maybe you can answer that 2 years later. I'll call you again.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. So last
But
question.
one thing to correct in your party thing is we don't party on weekends. Parties happen on weekdays.
Oh, is
Weekends
it?
are for travel.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah, just to build on that, Wharton encourages partying so much that we don't have classes on Fridays. We have a 4-day work week, so
I
Fridays
forgot
is
about that.
social.
And we don't have classes on Wednesdays. They're only Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, because they so Tuesdays Tuesday nights are like Friday nights for us.
Wow.
And then there's a Friday night. So,
And Saturday night again.
And Saturday night, yeah.
Oh wow, that's
Which
lovely.
is like I was agreeing with him, which is that towards the end of your MBA, like how much beer pong can you possibly play? Like there is a theoretical limit to beer pong as well. So that
And I've seen people like I don't drink, but I've seen my friends like alcohol capacity has massively increased in those 2 years.
Oh god, cool. So last question again in the interest of, firstly, thank you so much again. Like this is super fun and super insightful. So last question is, if anyone wants to get into a Harvard, Stanford, or a Wharton, what is your one piece of advice for them?
For Wharton, it'll be one, be authentic, right? I wouldn't say, I would say definitely don't try to portray yourself as someone you're not. One, it's just not doing justice to yourself as a person and your own journey. I think that's something that every person like really shouldn't do. And secondly, just be collaborative and just work with the team, right? I'm sure that you're a fantastic person, but for Wharton, what matters as much is how you gel well with others. And that's something I'd definitely say, just keep in mind on priority with their own goals.
Cool. Perfect.
I think for getting in, my advice would be to, I think first of all, yes, I totally agree. You have to be authentic, but and in addition to that, I think if you have time, then you should work on creating a well-rounded profile, which I was talking about. You might have some spikes in your career, in your resume. Try to build more spikes in other spaces as well. If you're good academically, try to do things good in career. If you're good in both, then try to do something extra outside of the work and outside of academics.
Like something like volunteering in an NGO.
Volunteering, doing something totally different, like a podcast. Or
That's a good one.
Yeah, but that's my advice for getting into this.
Got it.
I agree with everything said before, and I think that the only thing I'd add on top would be that to start building relationships with the school even before the school. In my case, I had existing relationships with beyond admissions, but with professors because. Here's the thing, just as a quick hack there, which is that you can always write to professors. Like you can go and see who's teaching what classes, because that's available. See who's teaching what again, and because all of these lecturers and professors are academics. They do research and they publish and all that sort of stuff. Anyone from the outside world can get in touch with any of these professors saying, hey, I'd love to just assist you and help you. Start building bridges with the school, both in admission, show up for the admissions events and have your name known, but also start building some relationship and connection with the school. So you're just try to eliminate the idea that you're not an unknown entity, but you are a known entity. Say, hey, all of these schools do treks to India. Hey, are you, hey, India Club at whatever. Are you doing a trek? Can I make some connections for you? Just be out there as a helpful resource for the school anyway, because these schools also still need further help. And then just become a known entity to the school and the ecosystem, and that really will go a long way.
Got it. Perfect. So
I think one more thing I would add, just after listening to you guys, I think after admitting in, I think the more important aspect is like, don't think about MBA or business school as your destination, but think of it as a starting point.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've seen a lot of people who just I want to go to this business school, and once they get there, they just relax off. But that is where the journey is actually starting. So once you reach there is when your actual career.
Wait, and if there's anyone in undergrad, by the way, all of these schools have 2+2 programs, which is that while you're in undergrad, you can apply. They'll give you a deferred admission for starting 2 years after. So you go do 2 years. And I know people at HBS and at Stanford at least who've gone the +2 admission, meaning while you're still in undergrad, you can do your application. They'll admit you. Okay. You can spend 2 years working somewhere else, and then your admission is guaranteed. So in fact, people have even right now in every batch in almost all batches there are 2+2 people.
Got it. I think awareness is not there about this deferred MBA. So I think that's a good point. Cool, perfect. Thank you so much, guys. Once again, it was lovely talking to all of you, and I am sure people are going to gain like a lot of insights from this. Thank you so much once again for doing
great
this.
Conversation. Thanks everyone, guys.
Thanks, guys. Perfect.